Chapter 894. If it was in the past, it would have been impossible for the two of them to defeat 20 Tatar cavalrymen. But now, the 21 cavalrymen, including Hu Bo, had expended a great deal of energy and were panting heavily. They had turned the impossible into possible. Let's settle this once and for all. He glanced at Tianhu, his voice carrying a clear challenge. Okay. Tianhu was still a man of few words. After he finished speaking, he suddenly rushed forward and chopped at the head of one of the elite Tatar cavalrymen, forcing the cavalryman to raise his blade to block. Using this opportunity, he slashed out with his second blade. The back of the blade smashed into the cavalryman's back. With a heavy blow, the cavalryman's mouth spilled out and he fell from his horse, heavily injured. In one round, they captured another man. Below them, some warriors had already run over and tied up the injured Tatar rider who had fallen off his horse. When He saw this scene, he couldn't help but praise in his heart. Although this Tian who didn't like to talk much and gave people the impression that he was very boring, his skills were truly impressive. Although they hadn't fought before, He had a feeling that if they fought one-on-one, he would be the one to lose. Since Tian who had moved, He didn't hold back either. He galloped towards the nearest cavalryman and used the momentum of his horse to slash out with his blade, colliding with the cavalryman's strength. When the first attack failed, he followed it up with another attack and another attack at the same location. The 3 attacks all landed on the cavalryman's scimitar. The powerful force made it so that the cavalryman couldn't hold his blade. The scimitar fell, and Suhi's blade came down again, hitting the cavalryman's chest and knocking him off his horse. Although they were both captured, Tian who only used 1 round and 2 blades. He had indeed used 3 rounds and slashed out 4 times. Just from this point alone, it was clear that the two were stronger. The two didn't stop attacking. Every now and then, a Tatar cavalryman would fall from his horse. They were really too tired, and the ones that came were 2 battle generals with great strength. They barely managed to block a few moves before falling off their horses and becoming captives. In just 15 minutes, only 3 people were left: He, Tianhu, and Hu Bei. Hu Bo hadn't participated in the battle just now. Firstly, he disdained to attack together with others, and secondly, he needed time to recover his strength. Right now, it was a 1 versus 2 situation, and there were no other companions by his side. With a howl, Hu Bo unleashed a ferocious attack. With a curved blade and a round shield, he was able to fight 1 versus 2, resulting in a stalemate. Although Hu Bo had lost to Yang Chendong several times in a row in terms of commanding, this did not prove that there was a problem with his intelligence. Who hadn't lost in front of Yang Chendong? Who had truly won before? If Hu Bo was really so useless, why would the Great Khan use him again and again? Not only that, Hu Bo had some talent in commanding, and his individual battle prowess was also extraordinary. He had fought against He and Tian Hu for more than 30 rounds without losing. He was still full of energy, his blade constantly moving as he unleashed ferocious attacks. He and Tian Hu were constantly retreating. Only when the opportunity was right would they take the initiative to attack and find the opponent's weakness. They could see that Hu Bo was just going all out before his death. As long as they could hold on for a while, the opponent would be completely exhausted and lose. Their estimates were not wrong. Although he had rested for a while, his body had not fully recovered. This attack was just his final performance. From the 40th round onwards, his blade speed had clearly decreased. At this moment, He made his move. He continued to exchange blows with Hu Bo, pushing him back step by step. As Hu Bo continued to retreat, he had unknowingly reached Tian Hu's side. Suddenly, a saber slashed towards his ribs, forcing him to put down his shield to defend. At this moment, a second saber appeared. Tian Hu took the opportunity and slashed at the back of Hu Bo's body. The huge force from the saber caused Hu Bo's vision to darken. He fell from his horse and was bound. The battle was finally over. He and Tian Hu looked at each other at this moment, and they burst into laughter. In this battle, the two of them were almost equal. In the end, it was still up to the 6th young master to decide who would be the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. The sky finally brightened. No matter what the reason was, Hu Bo had completed the mission that Great Khan Tuachuo had given her, persevering until the very last moment. In the end, Tuabuhua still managed to escape under the moonlight. The light cavalry and scouts that were sent out did not follow them. They only captured the 2,000 wounded soldiers and brought them back to the main camp. In the main tent, Yang Chendong looked at the generals who were covered in blood and looked a little tired, but they were in good spirits. He was naturally very happy. Although they did not capture Tuabuhua, the enemy's 30,000 elite cavalry was defeated. In the end, only 3,000 managed to escape. They were no longer a threat. Moreover, Yang Chendong had a feeling that Tuahua was in real danger this time. After dominating the prairie for so long, he had offended a lot of people. Previously, it was because he had strong soldiers in his hands that no one dared to do anything to him. But now, there were only 3,000 elite cavalrymen by his side. So, it was hard to say. Yang Chendong sat on the chair and first congratulated the generals on their victory. When he heard that they had captured 2,000 wounded soldiers, he was even happier. He ordered, immediately send them back to the first city hospital for treatment. Wounded soldiers are good stuff. They have experienced fighting on the battlefield, and even died once. They have a deeper understanding of what they should do on the battlefield in the future. Once they recover from their injuries and return to the team, they will definitely be the best of the best. Yes. When the servant Yang Lu heard the order, he immediately nodded and walked out of the tent to make the arrangements. After discussing the battle, Yang Chendong's gaze finally landed on Su He and Tian Hu. He then looked left and right, but did not immediately make a decision. For Yang Chendong, no matter which of the two men was qualified to be the division commander of the world's 1st Cavalry Division. However, there was only one position for the division commander. How should he choose? Even he had a headache. As if seeing Yang Chendong's dilemma, Su He, who was standing below, had a complicated look on his face. Then, his expression became more determined. He stepped out of the group and first gave a standard military salute to Yang Chendong. Then, he said, 6th young master, I am willing to withdraw from the competition for the position of the 1st Cavalry Division's division commander. Oh. Why? Su He was willing to take the initiative to withdraw. This was really out of Yang Chendong's expectation. However, the 1st Army's commander Tiger's Mane and the deputy commander Shi Bi, who were standing below, let out a long sigh of relief. This was the result of their private efforts for a long time. 6th young master, Tian Hu's strength is very strong. He is very suitable to be the division commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. As for me, the Tatar Division still needs me. Su He said concisely. Then, he looked at Tiger's Mane. The reason why Su He made such a decision was indeed because Tiger's Mane and Shibi had done a lot of private efforts. In order to keep this Tiger general, the two of them even took the initiative to promise that as long as Tiger's Mane was willing to stay, the Tatar Division could be trained into another 1st Cavalry Division. When the time came, they would give him whatever he wanted. In addition, Yang Chendong was a little embarrassed. In the end, Su He made such a choice. Looking at Tiger's Mane, he knew that he had to stand up and say a few words. He stepped forward and said, Young master, this time our new army's cadres have lost too many. Many people participated in the 1st Cavalry Division selection and joined it. If Su He leaves, we really don't have a suitable division commander candidate. Young master, please help us. After saying this, Tiger's Mane lowered his head. He had followed Yang Chendong for a long time. He had heard Yang Chendong talk about the overall situation more than once. Now, his decision was somewhat narrow-minded. He was speaking from the perspective of the new army. He was afraid that the 6th young master would be angry. From Tiger's Mane's perspective, his way of doing things wasn't wrong. This time's actual combat training had indeed stimulated everyone's enthusiasm. Needless to say, the foreign race's soldiers had used all their strength in order to be promoted to the Han dynasty. The Han Dynasty's soldiers had also worked hard for a hero card. These thoughts were too normal. Even as the commander, Tiger's Mane couldn't stop them. He could only agree to the soldiers' requests. At the same time, he also talked to some of the corps members. There was only one goal. Once they had gotten the benefits and proved themselves, they could go back. Although the world's #1 cavalry division is good, our new army isn't bad either, right? As for the commander's advice, some people listened, while others didn't. After all, everyone had the right to choose their own future. Tiger's Mane only talked to them and didn't order them. Even the 6th young master wanted capable people to join the 1st Cavalry Division. How could he dare to threaten them with orders? As a result, there were indeed quite a few people who passed the battlefield test and returned. However, there were even more people who didn't return. Because the majority of the people who passed the test were officers, the number of officers in the new army rapidly decreased. Su He was one of the people that Tiger's Mane and the deputy commander were willing to fight for. The truth was just as Su He said. After he left, there really wasn't a suitable candidate to be the Tatar division's commander in the new army. Servant Yang Chendong naturally told the following things to Yang Chendong. He fully understood the other party's difficulties and turned a blind eye to some of their private actions. Now that Su He had publicly said that he wanted to return to the new army, he naturally couldn't stop him. All right. Since this is Commander Su He's own choice, we can't force it. The 1st Cavalry Division's commander will be Jianghu. He will be conferred the rank of senior colonel. According to the previous regulations, the 1st Regiment's commander will be Temu, the 2nd Regiment's commander will be Lu Duo, and the 3rd Regiment's commander will be Mu, The 3rd Regiment's commander will be left empty until a suitable candidate is found. Finally, I will personally issue the order. What do you think? Commander Tian, do you have any other requests? Chapter 895. Yang Chendong began to set up the framework of the 1st Cavalry Division. After that, the specific work would be completed by Tianhu and the 2 newly appointed regimental commanders. Tianhu, who had been called out, knew that he was going to be the 1st commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. Excitement finally appeared on his calm face. He suddenly knelt on the ground and raised his head to look at Yang Chendong. With a very respectful tone, he said, "Teacher, this student will definitely live up to your expectations." Most of the people who came from the Yang Chendong Academy were used to calling him Dean. However, there were also some people who performed well and were favored by Yang Chendong. They were specially taken care of and could be called teachers. Tian, who was one of these people. It was natural for a student to kneel before a teacher. Yang Chendong didn't stop Tianhu's actions. Instead, he said with a face full of praise, "Tianhu, I'm handing over these elite cavalry troops to you. What I want is an army that can fight at any time, and win at any time. As long as you can do this, the logistics division will do their best to satisfy your needs. However, there is only one condition. If the combat strength of the troops is not good enough, I will hold you accountable as the commander. Teacher, don't worry. Since you've given this heavy responsibility to this student will definitely live up to your expectations. In the future, the 1st Cavalry Division will not disgrace this name. In the cold weapons battle, it will become the undisputed #1 in the world." Tianhu said as if he was making a promise. He wasn't hot-headed. Although he said that the 1st Cavalry Division was the best in the world, it was only in the cold weapons battle. From this, it could be seen that he already had some plans in mind for how to develop and strengthen the troops of the 1st Cavalry Division. Later on, the facts also proved that the 1st Cavalry Division lived up to their name. The 6,000 cavalry troops had indeed become the strongest cavalry on the grasslands. Every time they went out to battle, the news of victory would be sent back. In battle, all the cavalrymen were good at using dual sabers. When they met a strong opponent, they would use one saber and one shield to attack and defend. In the end, as long as they heard their name, there would be no one who would not be afraid. The war with Tuatua Buhua had finally ended, and the world's #1 cavalry division was officially established. The 1st Division commander was Tianhu, the 1st Regiment commander was Temu, the 2nd Regiment commander was Lu Duo, and the 3rd Regiment commander was waiting to be appointed. When the news came out, Lu Duo burst into tears in his own tent. First, it was the captives. Then, it was the surrendered soldiers. Then, it was the battle to the death. Now, not only had he become the envied regiment commander, he had also become a member of the Han Chinese. From this moment on, he was truly reborn. The past had nothing to do with him anymore. Everything in the future would be a new beginning, and all of this was given to him by Yang Qindong. After crying loudly, Lu Duo walked out of the tent. He suddenly knelt down in the direction of the main tent, representing his excitement, emotions, and firm political determination. At the end of the battle, they brought the captives and put away the tents. The mercenaries returned to the beginning city in a grand and vigorous manner as if they had come from the outside. There was still a great news waiting for him here, but he was still unaware of it. The army returned to the beginning city. It was already August, and it was the hottest time of the year. The winter in the beginning city was really cold, but it was not without its benefits. At least, it was not so hot in the summer. In the Yang residence, the news of the 6th young master's return had already spread. Immediately, there was a big cleaning. Water was splashed everywhere in the courtyard. While cleaning the ground, it also had the effect of cooling down the temperature. When Yang Qindong stepped into the gate, a cool breeze blew on his face. Hee, good, good. Yang Qindong chuckled and prepared to go to the inner courtyard. He had not seen the 3 madams for more than a month, and he missed them very much. However, before he could take a step, the 2 maids had already bowed and greeted him with a sincere smile on their faces. Hello, 6th young master. The 6th young master has worked hard. Congratulations to the 6th young master. Oh. Congratulations to you too. Yang Qindong said indifferently. He thought that everyone was congratulating him because he had won the battle, so he did not care. However, when he walked all the way to the inner courtyard, everyone he met along the way would greet him and congratulate him. This made Yang Qindong feel that something was wrong. He did not know how many battles he had won, but it seemed that these maids did not care so much about it in the past. It wasn't until he arrived at the inner courtyard that he saw the 2nd madam's maid, Xing, respectfully escorting a female doctor in a white robe out. His brows furrowed involuntarily and his expression became nervous. He strode forward and said as he walked, Dr. Zhao, why are you here? Teacher. When she saw Yang Qindong walk over, the so-called Dr. Zhao quickly saluted to show her respect. Dr. Zhao's name was Zhao Yanmei. She was also a student of the Yang Family Academy. She was once known as the 2 saints along with Yuan Heping, who was known as the Sacred Hands. However, the former specialized in internal medicine and surgery, while the latter specialized in gynecology and pediatrics. Normally, if the madams were unwell or felt uncomfortable, it would be Zhao Yanmei who came to see them. They were all women and often went in and out of the inner courtyard of the Yang residence, so they were more at ease. Now that Zhao Yanmei was here, it must mean that one of the madams was unwell. It was no wonder that Yang Qindong became so nervous. Why are you here? Is one of the madams unwell? Yang Qindong did not even return the salute and asked anxiously. Facing the anxious Yang Qindong, Zhao Yanmei was neither anxious nor slow. She even said with a smile, Teacher, this student congratulates you. Congratulations, congratulations again. What's going on? When Yang Qindong entered the courtyard, he heard these 2 words the most. At first, it was fresh, but now he was a little annoyed. About this, please find out once you enter the inner courtyard. He did not know where Zhao Yanmei's courage came from. She did not tell him immediately, but kept him in suspense. It must be said that she had no choice. 2nd Madam had already told her that some things must be said by herself and not by others. Okay, I will go take a look. Xing, lead the way. Yang Qindong's face did not show whether he was angry or happy, but at least he was more stable than before. Zhao Yanmei dared to keep him in suspense, so it should not be a bad thing. Xing happily agreed and led Yang Chendong to the room of the second madam in the inner courtyard. Yang Chendong's footsteps were very fast, causing Xing to quickly fall behind. It wasn't until Yang Chendong entered the small courtyard that he saw Qiao Yin resting under a large tree. Seeing that she was fine, he let out a long sigh of relief. The maids beside the tree were very perceptive. When they saw Yang Chendong appear, they bowed and paid their respects. They ignored the sixth young master and went in front of second madam. Holding her small hand, they asked with concern, "Qiao, I just saw Dr. Zhao leave. What happened? Are you feeling unwell?" At this moment, Qiao Yin's face was red. "Young master, I did not expect you to return so quickly. I was originally prepared to welcome you at the door with fourth sister and fifth sister. We are husband and wife. There is no need for those complicated formalities." "That's right, you still haven't answered me. Where are you feeling unwell?" Yang Chendong casually waved his hand. He had never cared much about formalities. It was only because of his high status that he had to pay attention to them. However, in his opinion, when he was with his wife, he should save on formalities. Feeling Yang Chendong's sincere concern, Qiao Yin's face was like a peach blossom. She first lowered her head and then said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "Young master, I am not sick." "Not sick? Then what is Dr. Zhao doing here?" "It's fine." "What is it that you cannot tell the young master? Hurry up and say it." If Zhao Yanmei's expression did not change when he saw her and even looked a little happy, he would have thought that Qiao Yin was seriously ill. Seeing Yang Chendong so anxious, Qiao Yin knew that she could not hide it any longer. She said in a small voice, "Qiao, is really not sick. It's just morning sickness." "Not sick? Morning sickness?" The anxious Yang Chendong was stunned by these words and stood there in a daze. "Yes, it's morning sickness. Dr. Zhao said that I am pregnant with the young master's child." As Qiao Yin spoke, she gently stroked her stomach that had not changed at all. She looked very happy. "Pregnant with my child?" At this moment, Yang Chendong finally reacted. He stood there in a daze. At this moment, it was as if his mind had gone blank. At this moment, it was as if everything around him did not exist and he was the only person in the world. In his previous life, Yang Chendong did not have a family because of the nature of his work. Naturally, he did not have children of his own. But now, someone suddenly told him that he was going to have a child. He was completely unprepared and did not even have the slightest bit of vigilance. He was completely stunned by this news. He was going to have a child. This was the first time in both his previous life and this life. Once upon a time, he had thought about this problem. When he first got together with Hu Yan and the others, he considered that they were still young and his condition was not stable. He had tried his best to suppress it and did not have any plans to have a child. Later on, when his condition got better, Yang Chendong thought about this problem and tried very hard. But for some reason, none of his wives were pregnant. Later on, when the war in various places became tense, he did not think too much about it. He thought that when the situation was completely stable, he would check it out properly. But he did not expect that before he even did that, he was already pregnant. This was enough to prove that there was nothing wrong with him. There was nothing wrong with him. Chapter 896. Young master, what's wrong? Don't scare Qiao. After reporting the good news, Qiao Yin had been waiting for Yang Chendong's reaction. However, she found that the young master stood there like a fool, neither happy nor sad. For a moment, she became anxious. "Young master, I don't know what to do. After all, eldest sister doesn't have a child yet, but I already have one. This really shouldn't be happening. If young master isn't happy, then Qiao doesn't want it." As she spoke, Qiao Yin began to cry. She couldn't be blamed for being so agitated. Hu Yan, as the legal wife, didn't have a child yet, but she, as a concubine, had a child first. This was not allowed in many large clans. In fact, in order to protect the position of the legal wife, whether or not she could keep the child was another matter. The crying Xiao Yin finally woke Yang Chendong from his fantasy. When he saw that Xiao Yin was crying, saying that she was wrong, and talking about Hu Yan, he pulled her into his arms. My good Xiao, what are you saying? You have a child, so the other sisters should be happy. How could they be angry? Moreover, they will have children in the future. There's nothing to be jealous about. Ah. Really? Xiao Yin was, after all, only a maidservant and not a legitimate daughter of a large clan. Therefore, she had only heard of such things and didn't feel that deep of a fear. Now that she heard Yang Chendong say that there was no problem, then there was naturally no problem. She immediately laughed through her tears. Hee, it's true. It's truer than real gold and silver. Yang Chendong hugged Xiao Yin lightly and laughed foolishly. Oh right, when did this happen? How long has it been? The last time the young master married little sister Tuoya. On the second night, didn't you come to my room and little sister Xiang Nyangzi's room? Dr. Zhao said that the child is still young. Xiao Yin's face was full of happiness when she spoke of this. Oh, okay. Yang Chendong was so happy that he could only nod his head continuously. When he was looking for the two madams, he had put in a lot of effort because he had found another sister for them. He felt a little guilty in his heart. He didn't expect that his hard work would really bear fruit. Good, very good. It was indeed wonderful. Xiao Yin's pregnancy was not only a joyous occasion for Yang Chendong, but also for all of Yangxie. As the ancients say, there are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. Even the common people thought so, not to mention a large force like the Yang faction. It could be said that whether Yang Chendong had an heir or not was related to the foundation of the country. Yang Chendong was a good person in every way. He also enjoyed supreme power in Yangxie. However, he was criticized for not having an heir. After all, he didn't have a child. If something happened to him, what would happen to such a large system? Where would they go? Fortunately, Yang Chendong was still very young. He was only 24 years old now. They could still wait and see. Otherwise, those old masters would probably consider sending him for a thorough examination. Now that Xiao Yin was pregnant, it was enough to prove that there was nothing wrong with Yang Chendong. This way, everyone's hearts could finally be put down. Yang Chendong returned, and the news of second madam's pregnancy quickly spread. Xiao Yin didn't let them say it before. First, she wanted to give the young master a surprise. Second, she wanted to see sixth master's thoughts. If Yang Chendong cared about Hu Yan's feelings, then she would definitely make the decision to abort the child. Among the madams, Xiao Yin regarded Yang Chendong as more important than her own life. As long as the young master was well, she was happy. As for her own thoughts, it didn't matter. Now that Yang Chendong had returned, it showed that he liked the child very much. The news naturally spread. Immediately, countless telegrams were sent out from Origin City. Countless officials lined up outside the Yang residence, requesting to meet and congratulate them. Beta Persei was the first to rush over. Although he was a servant of the Yang family, when the young master wasn't around, he didn't dare to casually enter the inner courtyard without orders. There were differences between men and women. Perhaps the young master wouldn't say anything, but someone might make a fuss about it. Young master, congratulations. As soon as he entered the courtyard and saw Yang Chendong, Beta Persei knelt down with a plop. At the same time, tears flowed from his eyes. They were tears of excitement and joy. As a person by Yang Chendong's side, he hoped more than anyone that the young master could have children as soon as possible. He had a little master, or even a group of little masters. All right, get up. Why are you crying as a man? Yang Chendong felt Beta Persei's loyalty. He excitedly helped him up and then laughed. The young master will have children in the future. How is it? Are you happy? I'm happy. Beta Persei nodded repeatedly without any pretense. Yang Chendong patted Beta Persei's shoulder and said emotionally, "All right, then I'll say something that will make you even happier. Step down from your position as the logistics division head and hand over the job to Yang Lu. You will continue to be by the young master's side in the future." He was used to working with Beta Persei. Even though Yang Si and Yang Lu did a good job, he still felt that something was missing. "All right." Beta Persei nodded vigorously. Although being the logistics division head was impressive and everyone had to curry favor with him, compared to being able to be by the sixth young master's side, that was all bullshit. "Well, go and tell Chiu Vi, Dao Xiao, and the others to guard the courtyard gate. Tell those who want to congratulate him to do their jobs well. The young master will be very happy, and go do whatever you need to do. By the way, the scale of the guards should also be expanded. Now that we have enough manpower, you can ask the two captains to pick the best ones to expand the guards." Yang Chendong thought that the number of guards was only 100. They could handle some small matters, but when it came to major matters, they would still be weak. Therefore, he took advantage of this opportunity to choose a good number of elites during the training. "Yes." Beta Persei agreed excitedly. He had been thinking about this matter for a long time, but since the young master did not say anything, he really did not know what to say. "Young master, what scale do you think is suitable for the expansion?" "A guard team of 500 people. The strength of 1,000 people should be enough to ensure the usual safety. By the way, go and discuss with Jiang Ping. The security of the inner court should also be increased. What exactly is needed and how many people are needed will depend on what she says." Yang Chendong thought of Qiaoyin's pregnancy. This kind of thing would continue to happen in the future. The safety of the madam must also be protected. The number of female soldiers must also be increased. Yang Chendong was about to have a child. The news quickly spread, and the entire first city was bustling with noise and excitement for several days. After that, everything gradually returned to calm. At this moment, a message from the Security Bureau interrupted the peace. Not only that, but the entire logistics division's captive camp was filled with wails and cries. Tuachuo Hua died. He died on the road of escape. He was ambushed by the Walla's leader, Yeshen. He, along with 3,000 elite cavalry and General Monk, all died in battle. According to witnesses, after Yeshen made a mistake last time, he sent out 30,000 cavalry this time. However, even with 30,000 men fighting against 3,000 men, they still paid a heavy price. More than 10,000 men died in the battle, and the remaining 20,000 men were all injured. In the end, the battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and everyone was exhausted to death. Tua Buhua himself also died in the end. It was said that there were no less than 50 wounds on his body. With the death of Tuachuo Hua, the Tatar tribe was about to become a part of the history of the grasslands. They went from glory to decline. Although Tuachuo Hua was dead, his spirit was still there. The captives in the logistics division had always thought that one day, the great Khan would come back. This way, they would have a place to be useful. Now that their hopes were dashed, many of them began to slack off. Some of them even went on a hunger strike, as if they wanted to live and die with the great Khan. This was especially true for the 2,000 injured and sick people who were sent to the hospital. They wanted to get revenge on Yeshen and almost caused a scene in the hospital. If the mercenaries did not appear in time, there would be a big problem. Among the captives, there were quite a number of Tatar soldiers. Naturally, the situation would not be small. The officers had no choice but to report the situation to Yang Chendong. Not long after, Beta Persei personally came out and brought Hubo, from the captive camp to the Yang residence. In Yang Chendong's courtyard, in the pavilion in front of the fake mountain, Yang Chendong and Hubo, sat opposite each other. In front of them was a stone table with a steaming hot tea in the middle. Beta Persei and the first guard captain Chiu Vi were staring at Hubo, to prevent him from jumping up and attacking. "Remove the shackles and shackles." Yang Chendong casually ordered Beta Persei as he demonstrated his skills in the art of tea ceremony. "Young master, this person's strength is not ordinary. Beta Persei wanted to remind him of something. However, Yang Qindong said in an unquestionable tone, "What's wrong? Is it because the young master has not moved for a long time that you have no confidence in the young master?" Beta Persei was reminded of the young master's abnormal strength. He walked up and used the key to unlock the shackles, freeing Hubo. Now free of her shackles, Hubo rubbed her wrists and smiled. This tea was personally brewed by the Duke of Loyalty. It must be delicious. Ha ha ha. As he spoke, he picked up a teacup. His originally smiling face suddenly changed. Then, the teacup was shattered, and a sharp piece of porcelain fell into his hand. He quickly slashed it in front of Yang Qindong. Bang! A figure suddenly flew out. Before Beta Persei and Xiao Vi could react, Hubo's burly figure flew out and crashed into the courtyard, his face covered in dirt. Yang Qindong was still sitting there as before. He held a teacup and slowly tasted the tea. The tea is not bad. Chapter 897. You're courting death. Beta Persei finally reacted. He snorted coldly and walked towards the courtyard. From the looks of it, he wanted to teach Hubo a lesson. Beta Persei, bring Hubo over and let him sit down. You and Xiao Vi can just watch from afar. Yang Qindong raised his head slightly and ordered in an unquestionable tone. Beta Persei did not dare to disobey. He could only help Xiao Vi carry Hubo and place him in front of Yang Qindong. Then, the two of them retreated far away and quietly watched everything unfold. Hubo sat down again. His face did not show any signs of defeat. On the contrary, he looked at Yang Qindong curiously and asked, "Your martial arts are very powerful." Speaking of which, this was the first time Hubo had observed Yang Qindong so closely. Only now did he realize that compared to Tua Buhua, this self-proclaimed heavenly Khan was so young that it was ridiculous. "Huh, you want to kill me? Then I'll give you a chance," Yang Qindong said without answering the question. Then, as if he was performing a magic trick, he took out a dagger the length of an arm and placed it on the stone table. Then, he signaled to Hubo with his eyes. It was as if he was telling Hubo that the dagger was here and that he could take it at any time and attack him at any time. Yang Qindong's calmness and even arrogance made Hubo very angry. He was not Yang Qindong's match, but that was only in terms of strategy. In terms of martial arts, he was someone who could fight against Tianhu and Suhi for dozens of rounds. How could he be afraid of Yang Qindong? He was just careless earlier. This time, he would not be careless again. Suddenly, he reached out to touch the dagger on the stone table. However, before he could see Yang Qindong's movements clearly, he was sent flying again and landed in the courtyard. Beta Persei and Xiao Vi appeared, and the two of them once again carried him to the stone table and sat down. They could see that the sixth young master's martial arts had improved again. If he was prepared, even several Hubo would not be a match for the young master. He sat down again and did the same thing. He touched his saber again and flew up again. Hubo continued to do the same thing. Even when she was beaten to the point of bleeding from the corner of her mouth, she did not stop. Yang Qindong attacked again and again, and every time before he attacked, he would say a sentence. Tuachuo Buhua, I didn't kill him. The murderer is Yeshen of Walla. It's wrong to seek revenge on me. I defeated you fair and square. You didn't die unjustly. Tuachuo Buhua, on the other hand, died in the encirclement. This Yeshen, who only knows how to pick up the leftovers, is the true villain. You only know how to stop eating and not cooperate with treatment. Don't you want revenge? After being sent flying for the umpteenth time, Hubo was once again helped to sit down by Beta Persei and Xiao Vi. She finally spoke. How can we take revenge? We're just captives now. Who said that you can't take revenge as captives? Haven't you been thinking of avenging your great Khan all this time? Unfortunately, you found the wrong person. Besides, Who said that captives can only be captives for life? As long as you perform well, you can still stand out. Take Su He for example. He's also from your Tatar tribe. Isn't he living a good life now? Also, in the new army, many of them were captured soldiers, right? What are you trying to say? Hu Bo finally stopped, ignoring the dagger in front of him. In fact, he didn't have the strength to swing the dagger anymore. His whole body was in pain as if it was falling apart. I'm saying that I can give you a chance to take revenge. Yang Qindong finally revealed his intentions. You're going to let us go? Hu Bo asked in shock. No. Yang Qindong shook his head. Whether it was Hu Bo or the elite cavalrymen captured from the battlefield, they were all very strong. If he let them go now, once they gathered together and found someone who understood the situation, they would definitely become a threat to him. Yang Qindong would never do such a thing as releasing a tiger back into the mountains. No, then how can we take revenge? Hu Bo asked with a look that said, are you kidding me? Join the mercenaries and you'll have a chance to take revenge. What, do you really think that if I let you go now, you can really destroy Yes Hen and his forces? From what I know, Yes Hen teamed up with Agadorji to ambush your Tuachuo Buhua Khan and reaped a lot of benefits from it. He also made a lot of money from trading with Baiming. Now that he has a strong army, do you really think that you can take revenge with this little force? This. Hu Bo was speechless. Although he was hot-blooded, he knew that courage alone wasn't enough to deal with Yes Hen. He also needed strength. And the mercenaries did indeed have that strength. How can I trust you? Hu Bo's thoughts finally returned to reality. When he knew that only the mercenaries could help him, his mentality changed. It's simple. Join the mercenaries and I'll help you destroy Walla's forces and kill Yes Hen within 3 years. If you can't do it, you can leave at any time. You can even start a rebellion if you want. Once Yes Hen is killed, if you and your companions want to leave, I promise I won't stop you. How about it? I can swear on my honor as the Heaven Khan to the Tingri Heaven. Yang Qindong said with a serious face. For others, swearing to the Tingri Heaven was a very important and even sacred thing. However, he didn't think so. He didn't believe in it. Moreover, he wasn't lying. He had to get rid of Yes Hen. Seeing that Yang Qindong had sworn on his honor, Hu Bo had no choice but to believe him. He nodded, all right, I believe you. Very good. It's a pleasure working with you. Now you can convince your companions not to cause any more trouble. Hurry up and recuperate. Don't wait until the war with the Val tribe starts. Your conditions aren't suitable. If you miss the big battle, you can't blame anyone else. I'll go and convince them. Hu Bo nodded. If he wanted revenge, he needed to strengthen himself. Now wasn't the time to go on a hunger strike. With Hu Bo's departure, the disturbance caused by the captives came to an end. However, the war wasn't over yet. Yang Qindong defeated Tuachuo Buhua and Yes Hen took the opportunity to deal with this powerful enemy. The Tatar tribe also announced their withdrawal from the Central Plains. The forces they controlled were also divided up. South of Talu, Sambulakwin was occupied by Baiming Xian Fu's army chief and commander of the 10,000 Department, Shi Wanshan. Yes Hen also took over Shajing province. At this point, Shi Wanshan was Yeshen's neighbor. The mercenaries were only separated by Sambulakwin. They were already quite close. Yang Qindong didn't take the opportunity to take over more cities. His military thinking came from the future. He didn't care about the gains or losses of a city. What he wanted was to eliminate the enemy's strength. It was just like when the main force was gone, after the soldiers died in battle, wouldn't the original Tatar territory become ownerless? Wouldn't it be easy to occupy it? Notify the 1st Cavalry Division. Have them patrol the area northwest of Saihan Mountain. Tell the other forces that this area belongs to us mercenaries. Anyone who wants to pass by must pay us taxes and follow our rules. Otherwise, we'll kill them all. Yang Qindong finally revealed his fangs and began to take control of the grasslands with First City as the center. The North Desert City was still under construction. Once the construction there was completed, it would form a triangle with the origin city. At that time, his power would be stable. Anyone who dared to challenge his position would be treated as an enemy and suffer the wrath of thunder. After the new army went through many rounds of selection, they returned to their original formation. The number of people in the world's 1st Cavalry Division was not full yet. Division Commander Jianghu and the 2 commanders carefully selected the people one by one. They were determined to create the strongest army in the world just like their names. The construction of North Desert City was still going on in an orderly manner. With Yang Si in charge of the overall situation, everything was going smoothly. After the Battle of Tuachuobuhua, the mercenaries' strong strength shocked all the people who had bad intentions. No one thought of provoking the mercenaries. The situation near First City was unprecedentedly peaceful. Qiaoyin's morning sickness was very serious. She vomited as much as she ate. After Dr. Zhao Yanmei's examination, he said that it was because of the water and soil. It was still too cold here. It was best to go to a place with a relatively mild climate. This was a good thing for Second Madam and her child. In September of 1453 AD, Yang Qindong decided to return to Qiqian City with his 3 wives. After more than a year, Yang Qindong had laid a good foundation on the grassland. From the initial army of only a few thousand people to the current army of close to 60,000. There was nothing before, but now there were 2 big cities and several small towns. Seeing that everything was on the right track, there was no big battle to fight in a short period of time. Considering Qiaoyin's body, Yang Qindong decided to leave and return to Qiqian City. The only thing that Yang Qindong felt a little regretful was that there was no news from Wuxing's 3rd Division and the Nizhen Cavalry Division that he sent to the north. The radio station only sent 2 telegrams at the beginning, saying that everything was going well. After that, there was no news, as if they had all disappeared. Yang Qindong did not believe that with the strength of Wusheng and Qinbo, they would be completely wiped out. Something unknown must have happened. He had also sent scouts, but there was no news. The Siberian area was too big. It was vast but sparsely populated. It was difficult to find a team. The only thing he could do was to keep sending people to inquire about the situation. Other than that, the only thing left was to give his blessings. Chapter 898. Yang Qindong decided to leave, and Tiger's Mane stayed behind under his arrangement. In terms of political affairs, Yu Mian was his deputy, and in terms of military affairs, Shbai was his deputy, so he could rest assured. After leaving Yang Si to build North Desert City and 6th Yang Qindong to manage the logistics team, Yang Qindong left the first city in mid-September with his 3 wives, Beta Persei, Wang Si, and the others, as well as the 2 guards and 3,200 members of the ferocious Tiger Regiment. When he left, Yang Qindong deliberately suppressed the news. He did not want everyone to know that he had left the first city. Although it was destined that he would not be able to hide it for long as he kept it a secret for one more day, he would be able to deter them for one more day. In order to prevent being discovered, the team left the city in the evening and set up camp 20 miles away from the first city. In the big tent, Yang Qindong accompanied the 3 wives to eat, and from time to time, there would be laughter. In the big tent at the side, Beta Persei was also enjoying the joy of eating and chatting with Kikij. Beta Persei and Kikij's marriage was reported to Yang Qindong, and after getting permission, they got married 7 days ago. It also became a grand occasion in the first city at that time. Not only did Tiger's Mane and a group of senior generals go, Tianhu, the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division, Xiao Feng, the leader of the ferocious Tiger Regiment, Feng Liang, the director of the Security Bureau in the first city, and even Yang Si and the others rushed over from North Desert City to congratulate their boss on his wedding. Most importantly, the witness was powerful. It was actually Yang Qindong himself who personally witnessed their marriage. With this big sign, everyone who was able to participate in this event shared the glory of it. Not to mention, Beta Persei was also very popular. At one point, he had arranged more than 50 tables for the wedding banquet, and this was because those who were not of a high enough rank did not appear. Otherwise, even 100 tables would not be enough. The better news was that Kikij was not marrying Beta Persei as a concubine, but as the first wife. Speaking of this matter, he had to thank his younger brother, Ba Tuesday. It was precisely because of his good performance on the battlefield that he participated in the battle against the Tatar elite cavalry. Not only that, he killed 4 of the enemy's men. Not only that, he was promoted to a higher rank, he also promoted his older sister Kikij. Now, only his mother, Badama, was left. Presumably, as long as she could perform meritorious deeds on the battlefield, there would still be opportunities. This was also the reason why Yang Chendong became the wedding officiator. Under such a lively atmosphere, Beta Persei could not stop smiling that day. 7 days after the wedding, he left the first city with the young master. After asking for instructions, he decided to take Kikij out to see the world. Inside the tent, Kikij did not seem to be in a good mood. Speaking of which, this was the first time she had been so far away from her mother. Although she had just come out, she was already a little homesick. As her husband, Beta Persei was the best choice to enlighten her. "Madam, do you miss your mother?" "It's okay, your mother is very safe in the first city. Besides, your younger brother is now a company commander in the new army. With him around, your mother won't be lonely. This time, we are going out to see the world. You don't know how prosperous Chichen City is. That place is no different from a holy place in our hearts." Tiger's Mane stretched out his hand and hugged Kikij in his arms, with a comforting expression on his face. Kikij burrowed into the wide and warm embrace and found a more comfortable position. "I think the first city is very big, it's very good." Haha. In this regard, Beta Persei was speechless. For a person who was used to drifting around the grassland, the first city was indeed very big. Seeing that Beta Persei did not speak and only smiled, Kikij's face showed a trace of caution. "What? Are you starting to despise me?" "Humph, I knew it. My mother also said that when a man gets a woman's body, it's the beginning of dislike." "Oh, I'm being wronged, how could I be that kind of person?" Beta Persei cried out loudly, then found that Kikij's face was full of smiles. He knew that she was teasing him, so he pretended to be very angry and said, "Well, you dare to lie to me. As punishment, I'm going to carry you to bed now." Don't. It's not completely dark yet, wait a little longer." When it came to this matter, Kikij's face quickly turned red. This man was a bull, a barbarian. She couldn't stand it every time. If it started now, it would be a problem for her to walk tomorrow morning. In order to divert Tiger's Mane's attention, Kikij took the initiative to say, "By the way, little brother did not join the 1st Cavalry Division, but chose to be a company commander in the new army. This won't affect his future, right?" How could it? When it came to serious matters, Beta Persei was indeed a lot more well-behaved. He liked to talk about these things, especially when he saw Kikij looking at him with admiration. The world's 1st Cavalry Division is indeed the most elite army. If it's a cold weapon battle, even Leng Feng might not be a match for it. But because they are all too strong, it's not easy to make a name for oneself there. It's better to go to the new army. Relatively speaking, the conditions for promotion there are much more relaxed. Besides, this is the intention of Tiger's Mane and Shibi. They first found Batu and persuaded him to stay. They also made a lot of promises, so it's impossible for them not to keep their word. They won't lie to Batu, right? You know that little brother is very honest." Kikij was still a little worried. To him, whether it was Tiger's Mane or Shibi, they were both important people. On the other hand, Beta Persei, who was beside him, was too close to him, so he didn't feel anything. "They won't." Beta Persei patted his chest and promised. "With my face, how could they not treat Batu well? Besides, little brother is not honest at all. He has a lot of ideas when he's in trouble." "Ah. Who said that little brother is not honest? He's an honest person." A moment ago, she was looking at Beta Persei with admiration, but after hearing what he said, Kikij became unyielding again. I was wrong, I was wrong. Beta Persei understood the principles taught by the sixth young master. He didn't know how to reason with a woman. When he saw that the situation wasn't right, he immediately surrendered. This caused Kikij to laugh coquettishly. In the main tent a few dozen meters away, Yang Chendong was drinking horse milk wine and eating mutton with the seventh madam. Yang Chendong wasn't very interested in these things, but it was the madam's request. She also said that after leaving here, it would be difficult to eat such authentic food in the future, so he could only accompany her. War God, is second sister asleep? Just like how every madam had their own way of addressing Yang Chendong, Tuoya was used to addressing Yang Chendong in this way. She's asleep. People who are pregnant always like to sleep, hee hee. When Xiao Yin was mentioned, Yang Chendong's face was filled with a happy smile. He was someone who was going to be a father, and Xiao Yin was now treated like a national treasure. In the past, there were only 4 maids serving her, but now there were twice as many, and 8 maids were serving her. Not only that, but Yang Chendong also gave her personal maid, Xing, a very high authority. Unless Xiao Yin was willing, no one was allowed to disturb her, not even the madams. This wasn't his intention to drive a wedge between the madams. In the future, he had watched many palace dramas, and there were many matters related to internal strife. Anything could happen. In the face of powerful interests, any kind of friendship could change. Especially when Xiao Yin was pregnant with his first child. It was impossible to say that no one was jealous. In order to prevent any possible man-made accidents, the safest way was to take sufficient measures now. Although it would hurt some people's feelings, once the rules were set, they could slowly get used to it in the future. Of course, all of this was only on the surface. Secretly, Yang Chendong also instructed Jiang Ping to pay special attention to second madam. The newly formed female guards were put to good use. Once they discovered someone with ill intentions, they could directly take them down without asking for permission. With this hidden hand, Yang Chendong's heart could finally relax a lot. War God, when we have a child in the future, will you protect me like how you protect second sister? Tuoya could feel Yang Chendong's nervousness. She could understand this point. Her background as a princess allowed her to understand some things too early. Because of this, she didn't have any intention of blaming Yang Chendong. On the contrary, she was very supportive. Of course, you are my wife. Your safety is naturally the most important. Yang Chendong was very casual, but his tone was very firm. That's great. Tuoya nodded contentedly. Oh, by the way, tell me about the other sisters. You know that we're about to meet each other, so we should know in advance what to pay attention to. Otherwise, it won't look good if we make a fool of ourselves. Okay. Yang Chendong really wanted to push the task to fourth madam, Lady Xiang. However, when he thought about how Tuoya had already left her hometown to follow him, if he rejected such a small matter, who knew if she would be sad? On the battlefield, Yang Chendong was the strategist. No matter how strong the enemy was, he wouldn't be afraid. However, in front of the other madams, his general's demeanor had long disappeared. Other than doting, there was only affection left. She waited for Yang Chendong to speak for 2 hours. When it was already late at night, he became careless. Tuoya's face was flushed red under the candlelight. When she thought of what was going to happen next, she said softly, "Call fourth elder sister over. I can't handle it alone." Hee, okay. Seeing that Tuoya had already gotten used to accompanying him with the other sisters, Yang Chendong was very happy. This was also a way to promote the friendship between the sisters. The next morning, the group set off as usual after breakfast. Everyone seemed to be in a good mood. This kind of process where they didn't have to think about fighting and only had to travel slowly was a great way to improve the relationship between everyone. Chapter 899. Su Yunsheng, the head of the reconnaissance team, was the first to set off, leading a company of scouts to scout ahead. With the sixth young master in the team, there was no room for carelessness in terms of safety. Yang Chendong didn't refuse Su Yunsheng, who had resigned from his position as head of the reconnaissance team and insisted on following him. This person seemed to be born to be a scout. With him around, there would be a better guarantee of safety, and he wouldn't have to worry too much about accidents happening. The team was vast and mighty, and slowly, all the way to the new, Gandusi area. Usually, when transporting supplies, they would often use this road, but the transport team could quickly pass through here in 10 to 20 days. However, Yang Chendong's team took more than a month. This was mainly due to the inconvenience of Qiao Yin's body. If there was a bumpy road in a hurry, who knew what would happen? Although Dr. Zhao Yanmei followed along, it was better to take precautions. In this way, the army stopped and walked until the beginning of October, when they finally arrived at Sea Town. There were already more than 30 ships waiting here. Long Yuntian, the acting head of the 1st Division of the 1st Sea Army, was ordered to wait here. When he saw the vast and mighty team coming from afar, he led the team and waited until the convoy approached. When Yang Chendong walked over, accompanied by Beta Persei and the guards, Long Yuntian led a group of officers to greet him. Greetings, 6th Young Master. Long Yuntian, acting head of the 1st Division, is waiting here for orders. Haha, good, make the arrangements, everyone get on the ship. Yang Chendong reached out and patted Long Yuntian's shoulder. Facing this familiar person, Yang Chendong smiled with satisfaction. But in the process of patting the shoulder, the expressions of some of the officers of the 1st Division changed, and their bodies tensed up a lot at this moment. Long Yuntian, who was patted on the shoulder, blushed and was very excited. He was stunned for a moment before he remembered something. He hurriedly turned around and continued to introduce, 6th Young Master, these are the officers of our new regiment. This is our new political commissar, Su Hao. Long Yuntian pointed at another officer who also had the rank of colonel and introduced him formally. Oh, political commissar Su, hello. This time, Yang Chendong didn't pat his shoulder. Instead, he reached out and shook his hand. To be honest, as the team grew bigger, there were already some people that he wasn't so clear about. For example, Su Hao in front of him was very unfamiliar to him. Su Hao's face was full of excitement. He stretched out his arms and grabbed Yang Chendong's arm, shaking it vigorously. He also subconsciously said some flattering words. 6th Young Master, this subordinate has admired you for a long time. Today, I finally get to meet you. I'm extremely excited, extremely excited. Huh, do your best. Yang Chendong also responded with a smile. Then, he shook hands with the other officers of the 1st Division one after another. After a round of greetings, the team began to board the ships. Because Yang Chendong's return to Crimson City this time wasn't a public move, there were no large ships arranged to welcome him. Most of the ships weren't very large, but there were always 2 or 3 second-class ships that were 70 to 80 feet long. It was just enough for Yang Chendong and the others to rest on. The largest ship was naturally Yang Chendong's. After the 3 madams and the maids boarded the ship, Beta Persei led the first guard team and boarded the ship. As for the second guard team, they had no choice but to board the other ships. In this regard, Yang Chendong didn't have any doubts. Since this was the 1st Marine Army's unit, it was his unit. No one would dare to harm him. He still had this much confidence. As for the reaction of the other officers when he shook hands with Long Yuntian, with Yang Chendong's keen insight, he naturally noticed it, but he didn't say anything. When it came to the situation of the officers below him, he wouldn't ask too much. However, his safety was at stake this time. Although he knew how to swim and was quite good at it, he knew that he had to be careful. There were a lot of diving equipment and oxygen tanks in the big warehouse. Even if there were any problems at sea, he would have no problem protecting himself. But the 3 madams were still on the ship. For their safety, there were some things that needed to be investigated. Go, arrange for 2 capable men to ask about the situation and relationship of the officers in the 1st Division. Understood. Beta Persei, who received Yang Chendong's order, nodded and found Ba Daojiang and Peng Yu. These 2 were veterans of the guard team. There was no problem in terms of loyalty. They were also experienced in the martial arts world. It was reassuring to leave some things to them. After the team boarded the ship, the acting commander, Long Yintian, immediately ordered the ship to set sail. The fleet then put away the anchor and set sail straight to the south. When they first boarded the ship, everything was so fresh, especially when they looked around, the sea and the sky were the same color. It was very spectacular. This made the fourth madam, Lady Xiang, and the seventh madam, Tuoya, who had never seen the sea before, very excited. But after a long time, the scenery was the same every day. Even the best scenery would have a day when they got tired of it. Yang Chendong had no choice but to play cards with the three madams in the ship's lounge. It was a happy and harmonious atmosphere. After a few days of sailing, the ship was finally no longer lonely. They could see other ships in the distance, but because of the distance, they didn't have much contact with each other. When Yang Chendong heard Beta Persei's report, he stood on the bow and looked into the distance with binoculars. He saw the ship with the North Korean flag. Putting down the binoculars, Yang Chendong looked thoughtful and said to Beta Persei, "Go, call Long Yintian here." Soon, Long Yintian appeared, and Yang Chendong's question followed. "The North Korean Navy is not far away. Do they often appear here?" "I don't know." Long Yintian shook his head with an ugly expression. This time, without waiting for Yang Chendong to ask anything, Beta Persei said with dissatisfaction, "You don't know. Have you never made this trip before?" No, this is the first time I've made this trip." "Oh, yes, when I passed by here, it seems that there are ships nearby." With a red face, Long Yintian explained hesitantly. "Okay, you can go down first." Yang Chendong raised his hand and dismissed Long Yintian. Yang Chendong fell into deep thought as he looked at his departing figure. "Beta Persei, what about the information I asked you to send?" "There's no news yet, but soon. The Navy soldiers here are very principled. It's not so easy to get information. It will take a little time." This time, it was Beta Persei's expression that was unnatural. "There's no other way. If the task assigned by the sixth young master was not performed well, anyone would have an ugly expression. There's no hurry. There are still more than 20 days from here to Husung City. It should be enough. It's just that the existence of the North Korean Navy in front of us is a hidden danger. Right now, Beiming doesn't have a navy, so they don't pose any threat to us. However, this is our supply route to Shecheng. If the North Korean Navy decides to attack us one day, then the situation won't be good. Well, take note of this matter and remind me when we return to Resin City's marine headquarters." "Yes, young master." Tiger's Mane nodded and agreed. This seems to be a small episode. Yang Chendong didn't care too much about it, but Tiger's Mane stepped up the security work of the guards. He always had a strange feeling that the situation seemed to be wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong, so he could only strengthen his own defense to prevent unexpected things from happening. It's a pity that this is not on land. In case of an accident, he can't contact the second guard and Commander Xiao Feng's Tiger Regiment. But thinking about it, with their combat experience, once something happened, they should be able to react immediately. Beta Persei's nerves became nervous, and he was a little absent-minded even when he was accompanying Kikich. The days passed like this until 20 days later, they finally arrived at the sea area of Husung City. Only then did he relax a lot, and at this time, Biyao Jiang and Peng Yu, who were sent to inquire about the matter, finally came to report. For more than 20 days, the two ate and lived with the Navy warriors and worked hard to make friends with them. Finally, they figured out the situation of the first group. This time, they came to report to Beta Persei. Half an hour later, Beta Persei came to the main cabin where Yang Chendong was and reported the situation in detail. "Young master, Husung City has investigated many people and many things. Long Yuntian is one of the people who has been judged to be problematic." Beta Persei reported while paying attention to Yang Chendong's expression. "Long Yuntian has a problem? What's the problem? Even if you know that he has a problem, why did Gao Xiong send him to pick me up? What does this mean?" Yang Chendong was also a little confused, but it could be seen that he was somewhat angry. Yes, young master, this is the problem. Long Yintian's problem is that he was not careful when inspecting the goods at sea, and that batch of goods happened to be one of the goods that Yang Taizhu smuggled out at that time. It is because of this matter that some people think that Long Yintian may be Yang Taizhu's accomplice. Even if he is not, at least he is someone who helped him. I heard that because of this, there is still a lot of controversy. In the following time, Beta Persei gave a detailed report of the situation that Biyao Jiang and Peng Yu learned from the soldiers below. According to Beta Persei, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Supervision, Wu Qian, believes that Long Yintian has a problem and once proposed to remove him from his post and investigate, and even search his house. But this proposal was rejected by Commander Gao Xiong of the 5-man team. What Commander Gao Xiong meant was that Long Yintian was a good cadre, a cadre who could fight. It was just that he wasn't that principled in the past. Considering that the goods came from Crimson City and were wanted by the Security Bureau, it was reasonable that he didn't check them carefully. After all, the status of the Security Bureau was very special, and not every department had the right to order them around. Therefore, Long Yintian's problem was at most a momentary lapse in inspection, and a person should not be killed because of this small matter. Chapter 900. Since then, the two of them had never found a way to solve Long Yintian's problem. But soon, there was an impact. With Long Yintian's ability and experience, he was originally a popular candidate to be the commander of the 1st Marine Army's 3rd Division. But because of this, his appointment was blocked by the political department. Fortunately, Gao Xiong still acted and transferred him from the 3rd Division to the 1st Division. Considering the impact, he gave him the position of acting regiment commander of the 1st Division instead of regiment commander. Right, 6th young master, Wu Qian's brother-in-law is the 1st Division's political commissar Su Hao. He's on the ship beside us. Beta Persei seemed to have thought of something and whispered to Yang Chendong. Yang Chendong listened quietly and slowly nodded. Even though he was secretly returning to Crimson City, he was afraid that he would attract too much attention and that someone would have ideas about him on the way. But no matter what, he shouldn't have sent an acting regiment commander to escort him back. Now, it seemed that this was Commander Gao Xiong's idea. He was clearly using this method to remind him to pay more attention to this matter. Gao Xiong still understood Yang Chendong. He knew that as Yang Xia continued to grow stronger, he rarely interfered in the affairs of the lower ranks. For example, it was not easy for Yang Chendong to intervene in matters of Long Yintian's level. That was why Gao Xiong arranged for this person to escort him back to Crimson City, hoping to use this method to remind him. Of course, Gao Xiong also had a sense of propriety. He did not ask Long Yintian to take the initiative to say anything to Yang Chendong. This kind of matter of skipping a rank to report, unless it was the 6th young master who took the initiative to ask, the subordinates could not casually talk about it. Otherwise, if everyone had to report to Yang Chendong, he would not be able to handle it even if he worked 48 hours a day. That was why the current situation was like this. Long Yintian escorted him back to the city as acting regiment commander. He also arranged for political commissar Su Hao to follow him. One was a political commissar, while the other was only an acting regimental commander. The former's brother-in-law was a high-ranking official in the Ministry of Supervision. Naturally, everyone would side with the former. It was no wonder that when Yang Chendong expressed his intimacy with Long Yintian, the officers in the regiment revealed strange expressions. After figuring everything out, Yang Chendong sighed. The self-inspection was carried out under his instructions to prevent a similar incident to Yang Taizhu from happening again. Now, it seemed that the investigation was very strict. Not only that, it seemed to be a little excessive. If this continued, wouldn't it cause panic among the people? Go. Call Long Yintian over. Remember, don't let anyone else see you. After pondering for a moment, Yang Chendong still wanted to hear what Long Yintian had to say. Understood. Beta Persei nodded and turned to leave. Not long after, Long Yintian appeared in front of Yang Chendong wearing a guard uniform. As soon as he appeared, he knelt on the ground with a plop and said that he was guilty. What are you guilty of? Yang Chendong's face was serious, but it was impossible to tell whether he was happy, angry, sad, or happy at this moment. I have let down the sixth young master's trust. I was careless during the inspection at sea, causing the smuggling ship to pass right in front of me, but I didn't know. I am guilty. Long Yuntian knelt on the ground, his eyes red as he said. Ever since he received the military order from Commander Gao Xiong, he had been waiting for this moment, waiting for Yang Chendong's private summons. When he came, Commander Gao Xiong had already said that the higher-ups were keeping a close eye on him. His position as acting regimental commander was only a temporary measure. If he couldn't solve it this time, he was afraid that when he returned, not only would he not be able to become a full member, he might not even be able to wear this uniform. If someone really wanted to investigate Yang Tieju's previous problem, he wouldn't be able to become a member of the Cold Front if he couldn't explain it clearly. This way, no one would dare to ask him if there was a problem. The best ending would be to be given a piece of land to farm. Although Long Yuntian wasn't afraid of being a farmer, he didn't want to continue farming in this situation. He didn't want to leave the army without a clear reason. However, he really had a problem that he couldn't explain clearly. If someone really didn't let go of this matter, he was afraid that other than a limited number of people, no one would be able to save him. And of course, Yang Chendong was among these limited number of people, and he was even the leader. After all, the leader of the 5-man team was the future 6th madam. Even she had to listen to the 6th young master. This could be said to be Long Yuntian's only hope, but no matter how he looked, the 6th young master didn't seem to have any intention of meeting him alone. Seeing that they were about to reach Crimson City in 3 days, he seemed to have lost all hope. He couldn't even sleep well these 2 days. Just when he couldn't see any hope in life, Beta Persei suddenly appeared and even took his guard uniform. Long Yuntian was overjoyed. He knew that his only hope had appeared. When he saw Yang Chendong, he knelt down and admitted his mistake, tears streaming down his face. Yes, you're right. Whether it was because of carelessness or carelessness, the smuggled goods passed right under your nose and you didn't notice. This is indeed a mistake that can't be ignored. It's only right that you be punished. Yang Chendong nodded. Yes, it's right. I'll obey the arrangement. Long Yuntian didn't have any intention of quibbling. If you do something wrong, you will be punished. There was nothing to doubt about this. What he suspected was that the punishment was a little too harsh, a little too targeted. This was also what Yang Chendong didn't understand. Logically speaking, Yang Tieju's smuggling wasn't the first time, so it was impossible for him to encounter Long Yuntian's inspection every time. If that was the case, then he would suspect that he was really involved in the smuggling. But if he didn't encounter it every time, then why did he have to target Long Yuntian like this? Could it be that there were other reasons for this? Captain Long, let me ask you, how did the other officers involved in the Navy deal with it? 6th young master, one of the company commanders, was directly expelled from the military and was given a piece of land to farm. There were also a few people who wrote checks and this matter was passed. Long Yuntian didn't dare to hide anything. This was his last chance, so he couldn't hide anything. Oh. The same thing, the same problem, how could the results be so different? What is the reason? Yang Chendong keenly found the problem. This. Long Yuntian didn't answer immediately, but hesitated. What? In front of the 6th young master, you still don't want to tell the truth? Beta Persei on the side saw that Long Yuntian didn't know what was good for him, and he was angry and roared with fire in his eyes. No, I don't dare, I will say it now. It's because the vice captain in charge of the case, Wu Qian, was selfish. Knowing that he couldn't hesitate at this time, Long Yuntian threw caution to the wind and said, Bastard, you can't talk about this kind of thing, do you have evidence? Yang Chendong frowned after listening. When it came to a vice captain, he couldn't help but be cautious. In particular, Wan Xiaoyu mentioned Wu Qian's name more than once in the telegram, saying that this person's workability was very good, impartial, and he was the main force in this inspection operation. This time, when he returned to Qixin City, Yang Chendong originally planned to meet this person. If this person was indeed outstanding, he could be put in an important position. But now, Long Yuntian actually said that Wu Qian was selfish, which made him take it seriously. There is no evidence. Long Yuntian knelt on the ground and shook his head. Everything was told to me by Xia Kuan, the assistant to Vice Captain Wu. At that time, there was a rumor that I might be the commander of the 3rd Division of the 1st Sea Army. This Xia Kuan came to me and said that Su Hao, Vice Captain Wu's brother-in-law, is now a lieutenant colonel in the Navy. He wanted to see if I could consider giving him a real position and let him be the commander of the 1st Regiment of the 3rd Division. If he couldn't, he could choose one of the 3 regiments of the 1st Division to be the commander. I knew that Su Hao had some ability, but he wasn't qualified to be the commander of a regiment, so I refused. Soon after, someone began to investigate me and said that I made a mistake in the inspection work in the coastal defense. Long Yuntian was still speaking slowly, and Yang Qindong could be considered to have a preliminary understanding of the matter. How a high-ranking officer used his authority, especially how to prevent his family from using his authority to do things that went against the law and morals, had once been a headache for Yang Qindong. The law was nothing more than human feelings. The law was the bottom line of morality, and morality was human feelings. The existence of the law was to protect the existence of human feelings. Especially for the Han people, who were originally a race that valued human feelings, it was impossible to completely eliminate such things. Thus, there was the saying of pillow talk, and there was the saying of a 7th-rank official in front of the Prime Minister. It was just that he didn't expect everything to happen so quickly. Qixin City had only developed for a few years, and such a problem had already appeared, and it had become so serious that it directly involved the appointment of a division commander. First, there was the matter of Yang Taizhu using his father's authority, and then there was this unfair treatment and even public threat. Yang Qindong knew that trouble had finally arrived. History had proven that when a country went from being strong to being defeated, it was usually due to the internal corruption. As the leader of the royal family, none of them were willing to be the ruler of a fallen country. The various decrees and orders that came out of their mouths were in principle for the good of the people, for the good of the country. The policies were good, but the people who carried out the policies were bad. It was because they were corrupt, and the governance was rotten, that in the end, the good policies were not implemented well, and in the end, the people had no way to live, and had no choice but to rebel. All along, Yang Qindong's main focus had been on the expansion of the military and the development of business. Reality had proven that these 2 matters had been greatly improved, and because of that, Yang Xia's faction had been constantly growing and expanding. However, when it came to internal governance, especially local governance, he had never thought of a better solution. Chapter 901. He had thought of doing things according to the democracy of later generations, but now it was the Great Ming Dynasty. The people who had been ruled by a feudal society for many years would not be able to adapt to democracy. Of course, he could also use his supreme authority to force it. But if that was the case, not to mention the new problems that would arise internally, once democracy was established, would the people agree to his continued expansion of power? The people were peace-loving. As long as their lives were good, they would be satisfied. How could they possibly support the expansion? If that really happened, they would really be shooting themselves in the foot. In order to achieve the unprecedented ideal in his heart, Yang Qindong must centralize power in the central government, or even in himself. For this reason, he would accept the infamy of being a warmonger and a butcher. But in this way, how to manage his own internal affairs and make them invulnerable became the most important thing at the moment. It was even a problem that must be solved. 6th young master, the company commander who was fired, was also blackmailed. I heard that the company commander has a very beautiful wife who was fancied by Xia Kuan's assistant. Xia Kuan wanted to persuade them to divorce first and then marry her himself, but the company commander refused no matter what, so this happened. Long Yuntian was still talking when Yang Qindong shook his head. Well, the young master already knows what happened. I will send someone to investigate. If it is really as you said, I will definitely clear your name. But before the matter is settled, we can't act rashly and alert the enemy. Do you understand? It was just a one-sided story. Yang Qindong could not completely believe it. He just took it as a reference. But to be able to say this, it meant that he already had doubts about this matter. Long Yuntian, who was kneeling on the ground, was overjoyed. After kowtowing a few more times, he left under Beta Persei's gaze. Young master. There was no one else in the room, so Beta Persei carefully asked for instructions. Yes, we can't doubt Long Yuntian's words, but without investigation, we have no right to speak. How about this, when we reach Crimson City, you go investigate in private and see if what Long Yuntian said is true. Remember, don't make any noise. We can't let a bad person go, but we can't wrong a good person either. Yang Qindong still didn't have the intention to investigate openly. No matter what, Wu Qian was a candidate recommended by Luan Xiaoyu. Based on this, he couldn't make a decision without conclusive evidence. Okay. Beta Persei nodded, indicating that he had noted it down. Other than Beta Persei and a few core guards, no one knew about Long Yuntian's secret meeting with Yang Qindong. Another day passed as if nothing had happened. This morning, Long Yuntian came to report that if everything went smoothly, they would be able to reach Crimson City the next day. Yang Qindong brought the three madams out to enjoy the sea breeze. Coincidentally, just as they appeared, not far away, there were several merchant ships that were obviously larger in size. Suddenly, an unknown ship approached. Out of instinct, Yang Heir ordered the guards to prepare for battle. At the same time, he reported to Yang Qindong and asked the young master and the madams to enter the cabin to rest. It's okay. Yang Qindong stood on the deck and shook his head. He had already seen the bright 5-star flag on those ships. Based on this, even if the other party was not on their side, they should be friends. And he had already asked, this was the outer sea area of Crimson City. It was only about 500 nautical miles away from the city. If this place was not safe, then the First Sea Army was really useless. Of course, there was another main reason why Yang Qindong made this judgment. That was, he did not see the panic on the soldiers of the 1st Regiment of the 1st Division. Presumably, they should know about this caravan, or perhaps they should know and be familiar with who they are. The facts confirmed Yang Qindong's thoughts. When the distance between the two sides was less than 10 nautical miles, the other side actually sent a small boat to approach them. It was at this time, with the help of binoculars, Yang Qindong saw that the small group of people were actually blonde Western foreigners. How the hell did they grow up to look like this? Beta Persei looked at the foreigners that appeared through the binoculars and was very curious. While cursing, he called the acting commander, Long Yuntian, and asked, "Who are they? What are they doing? Don't they know who is on the ship? Inform them and tell them not to come close." Yes. Long Yuntian nodded repeatedly, then went to the bow of the ship and personally commanded the flag bearers to signal the other ship not to come close. At the same time, after consulting Yang Qindong, he fired a shot. The shell landed right in front of the small boat, setting off a monstrous wave. After the shot was fired, the other party's small boat stopped. After seeing the contents of the flag signal sent by Long Yuntian, they replied that they have no malicious intentions. They just want to ask if Long Yuntian has anything to sell. They are willing to pay a high price for it. Tell them no, tell them to stay away. Otherwise, sink them all and throw them into the sea to feed the fish. Beta Persei said angrily, then walked to Yang Qindong and reported the situation. Call Long Yuntian over. Yang Qindong was interested in this merchant ship that suddenly appeared. He believed that the other party did not know the importance of him and his group on the ship. The reason why they did this was probably not the first time. They wanted to come over, but it was just a habit and they wanted to try their luck. Long Yuntian was quickly called in front of Yang Qindong, and the matter about the merchant ship quickly came to a conclusion. This was indeed a merchant ship team. They belonged to a force called the Kingdom of Portugal, and they did want to trade with them. Countless facts had proven that mercenary fleets often had good things that could not be bought or seen outside. Merchants pursued profit, and they just wanted to complete a transaction. After receiving a serious warning from Long Yuntian, they had already retreated. Portugal. The corners of Yang Qindong's mouth curled into a smile. In this era, the Kingdom of Portugal was still very powerful. They were once glorious in this era, together with Spain. In history, after more than 20 years, the Portuguese finally occupied the northern Moroccan city of Tangier, which had been competing with Spain for a long time. They would develop even more powerful. In history, the Portuguese fleet should not have discovered the great Ming dynasty. It was through the efforts of generations of seafarers that they truly opened the world between the East and the West. Among them, there were people like Magellan and Galileo. However, in this life, because Gao Xiong and the others had obtained the map given by Yang Qindong, they had gone to the West first. As a result, they had accelerated their contact with the Western world, which was why they had appeared in this sea area so early. Do they usually do this? Will they also stop ships halfway to buy things? Yang Qindong looked at Long Yuntian and asked a key question. Yes, they often do this. But we will not trade with them. The Navy has Navy regulations, they can't stop ships without orders, so their actions have no meaning. However, even though they have not succeeded even once, they still continue to do so. I really don't know what to say about their perseverance. Long Yuntian quickly gave an answer to this question. Okay, I know. Yang Qindong nodded, he was still reassured by the Navy's style. But letting them be so close to Kiosk City is not a good thing. It seems that it is necessary to arrange for Gao Xiong to talk to them. While he can sell them some things at a high price, he can also test their attitude and learn more about the situation in the West. This will play a very important role in the future expedition there. The appearance of the Portuguese merchant ships made Yang Qindong's idea of sending troops and conquering the West become hot. Some of the resources there are still good, and they can be occupied early. This is part of his future grand plan. Under the threat of gunfire, the Portuguese merchant ships gradually moved away. The next morning, the 1st Regiment successfully entered the coastal area of Kiosk City. In the morning, the fleet finally appeared in front of the new dock. Looking from afar, they could already see the crowd of people welcoming them. Before, they were far away, so they couldn't see anything. But now that they are close, the majestic charm of Kiosk City really appeared in everyone's sight. Seeing this, the 3 ladies couldn't help but exclaim. Even the second lady, Xiao Yin, who was the first to come here, had to sigh at this moment. After a few years, Kiosk City has become even more magnificent. Back again. After a sigh, Yang Qindong stepped off the ship and once again stepped on the ground of Kiosk City. The 6th young master returned to Kiosk City. The second lady was pregnant, so the whole palace became very lively. It was on this night that Yang Qindong was alone with Hu Yan when he mentioned the issue of children and his worries. Hu Yan was a very kind woman, and her relationship with Xiao Yin and the other sisters had always been very good. It was precisely because he knew this that Yang Qindong confided in her and told her his thoughts, including some new rules that needed to be established. With regards to Yang Qindong's requests, Hu Yan agreed to all of them. She lay in Yang Qindong's arms with a blissful look on her face. Dong Shui, you are very thoughtful. This must become a rule. In the future, when any sister is pregnant, they must do this. I will also set myself as an example. Unless second sister allows me to go over, I will definitely not casually step into her courtyard. It's been hard on you. Yang Qindong was touched by Hu Yan's kindness and gently stroked her arm. Chapter 902. How could that be? We are husband and wife. Dong Shui, please don't speak to me in this manner in the future. Oh right, you went to see my grandparents and parents. How are they? Are they all right? Not wanting to talk about this matter, Hu Yan asked about the situation in the capital of Beiming. All right, they are fine. Father is now a 3rd-rank official and has real military power in his hands. Even if something happens, there will be more room to maneuver. Furthermore, grandfather is a shrewd old man. It won't be easy for others to take advantage of him. Pei, what shrewd old man? Dong Shui, you used the wrong words. Hu Yan said coquettishly. Yes. Yang Qindong raised his hands in surrender. It was my fault for using the wrong words. I should be punished. Let me take good care of Yen'er tonight. As he said that, he pounced over. Immediately, there was a cry of surprise. Qiqian City's Department of Supervision. A 4-story building made of red bricks and iron tendons. It represented the supervision and encouragement of authority. Vice Minister Wu Qian was working here. On this day, he was walking home after finishing his work. When he passed by a small alley, a bearded man blocked his path. He didn't look very old. His eyes were very spirited and his voice was like a large bell. His voice seemed to be able to shake the heavens. Are you Minister Wu? The man looked at the average, 1.72 meters tall middle-aged man and asked. I am Vice Minister Wu Qian. Who are you? Wu Qian looked at the man with a puzzled expression. He was very sure that this was the first time he had seen this man. But for some reason, he felt as though they had met before. Wu Qian's residence was only 2 streets away from the Department of Supervision. Usually, in order to train his body, he would walk back and forth. He didn't even bring a single guard with him. Reality proved that Qiqian City security was very good. This was the first time he had encountered someone blocking his path. Even if he was blocked halfway, Wu Qian's eyes didn't show a trace of panic. There could only be 2 possibilities. First, he was a selfless person. He had no ulterior motives and wasn't afraid of any evil spirits. Also, he was very good at acting. But no matter what kind of person this person was, since he had appeared, he would find a way to make him give himself away. Yes, then the person I'm looking for is you. It's like this. I won't beat around the bush. I'm here for Long Yintian. Raise your hand and let him live. As a reward, these will all be yours. As he spoke, the man took out a stack of banknotes. Each banknote had 5,000 taels written on it, and there were 10 banknotes in total. It had to be said that the person who came had shown his sincerity. However, in Wu Qian's eyes, contempt appeared in his eyes. What? You want to bribe me, but do you know that we have a law that states that anyone who embezzles 10,000 taels of silver will be beheaded? That's enough to behead me 5 times. Sigh, only you and I know about this. Besides, I didn't give you 10,000 taels of silver. Each banknote only has 5,000 taels of silver. You can't behead me. The person who came was obviously prepared. As he said this with a smile, he said, Hee, I've asked around. Although your salary is high, these 50,000 taels of silver are enough for you to earn for a few years. How about it? Now, as long as you nod your head, these will all be yours. Oh. You're right. Wu Qian's face revealed a trace of emotion. After a slight hesitation, he reached out and took the 10 silver notes in his hand. But I don't know what you mean by being magnanimous. Seeing Wu Qian accept the banknotes just like that, a trace of regret flashed in the person's eyes. But soon, he returned to normal. It doesn't mean anything. As long as you don't hold on to Long Yintian's matter, we will naturally take care of the rest. Your request is simple. But what kind of person do you think I, Wu Qian, am? Men, quickly come and catch him. There's a thief here. Just a moment ago, Wu Qian still had a smile on his face, but all of a sudden, he turned hostile and began to shout loudly. This shout frightened the person who came. Everything happened so suddenly that he was caught off guard. As soon as the shout came out, hurried footsteps could be heard from the nearby streets. Needless to say, it must be Ling Feng, who was patrolling the streets, rushing over. That person snorted angrily at Wu Qian. You're ruthless. He turned and ran, causing Wu Qian to pounce forward to catch him. The person escaped, but the banknotes of 50,000 taels of silver were not returned. The person who came had a gloomy face. After entering another street, when he came out, he no longer had the beard under his face. He looked much cooler. Who else could it be other than Beta Persei? Just now, he went to test this Wu Qian. He began to investigate this matter after coming to Crimson City. He found his brother, Yang Wu, and the director of the security bureau, Che Chao. He even followed the sixth young master's instructions and found the fifth madam, Su Munair. Her CIA training had been completed and she was spreading out her own network. Although it was not complete, a high official like Wu Qian still did some investigation. He checked everything that could be checked, and all the results showed that this Wu Qian was a serious, responsible, and impartial person. This result naturally did not satisfy Beta Persei. When Long Yuntian reported to him, he was watching from the side. This person was the kind of person who had nowhere to go and would not lie. Therefore, he still did not approve of this result and decided to give it a try. So, he borrowed 50,000 taels of silver from Yang Chendong for that test. The result naturally did not satisfy him. After all, Wu Qian still took the money, but in the end, he called for help. What was the meaning of that? With a heart full of confusion, Beta Persei returned to the palace and saw Yang Chendong. The sixth young master couldn't help but laugh when he saw his dejected expression. What's wrong? Is it because he didn't accept your money? Young master, he took it. Beta Persei looked up and said something that surprised Yang Chendong. While Beta Persei was learning about Wu Qian, Yang Chendong was not idle either. He was also investigating this person's situation. He also found Wan Xiaoyu to hear her opinion. Unexpectedly, Wan Xiaoyu held Wu Qian in high esteem. Her evaluation of him was far higher than that of the Minister of Supervision, Shen Yu. According to her, if one of these cadres was the Iron Mask that Yang Chendong spoke of, then Wu Qian was such a person. All kinds of information also showed that Wu Qian was an upright person. Even when he went to and from work, he did not ride a horse or sit in a sedan chair like the other cadres. Instead, he walked on foot and did not even bring a guard with him. It seemed unreasonable to say that there was something wrong with such a person. Therefore, when Beta Persei came to borrow the money, he thought it was unnecessary. But since he had to try, he might as well try. Unexpectedly, Wu Qian really took the money. Didn't this mean that he was really a greedy person and very good at disguising himself? Had everyone been deceived by him? While Yang Chendong was still thinking about which part of the problem had gone wrong, Beta Persei spoke again. He did take the money, but then he shouted and attracted the patrolling soldiers. I was worried that it would look bad if I was caught, so I could only run back first. Oh, ha ha ha. Hearing this, Yang Chendong could not help but laugh. He really thought that the other party had taken the money. Now it seemed that the money was just evidence. Young master, what are you laughing at? The money is gone, and I did not test whether he was a greedy person. It was my dereliction of duty. Beta Persei did not understand the meaning of this laughter, but since the money was given to him, he had to give an explanation. Well, the money will not be lost. If you don't believe me, you can send someone to the Ministry of Supervision in the afternoon and see if he handed it in. Well, it seems that the problem should not be with this Wu Qian, but with his family. In this case, you go and do one more thing. Calling Beta Persei to his ear, Yang Chendong instructed. That afternoon, as soon as he went to work, Wu Qian handed over the 50,000 taels of silver. At the same time, he showed an attitude of wanting to investigate Long Zitian. For this matter, he directly sent someone to the 1st Sea Army's military headquarters to explain the situation to Commander Gao Xiong. At the same time, he also said that Long Zitian bribed his superior and that the problem was extremely serious. There was also a need to investigate where the 50,000 taels of silver came from. Gao Xiong had already received Long Zitian's report and knew that he had reported the matter to the 6th young master. He thought that the problem was about to be solved. He did not expect to receive another report from Wu Qian. For a moment, he was in a bit of a dilemma. Since the matter had been reported to the 6th young master, he could not casually hand over the person, so he went to the palace and wanted to make a face-to-face report to Yang Chendong about this matter. But before he could see the person, Beta Persei directly blocked his way. The young master said that the matter will be clear tomorrow. Commander Gao, please delay it for one more afternoon. Since Beta Persei said so, Gao Xiong used the excuse that Long Zitian was on an urgent mission and was not at home. When the matter was passed back to Wu Qian, his assistant Xia Kuan immediately said, "Minister, I have already asked. Long Zitian is in the Navy's military headquarters and did not go anywhere." "Is there such a thing?" Wu Qian was obviously angry, then he slammed the table. "I will find the sixth young master and tell him personally." Minister, it's late today. Tomorrow, if Gao Xiong still does not release the person, then report it tomorrow and let him suffer a little." Xia Kuan stopped him. Now that it was almost time to get off work, it was not wise to disturb the sixth young master. "Well, then wait until tomorrow. If you don't hand over the person, I will go to the palace and see the sixth young master," Wu Qian said angrily. Chapter 903. That afternoon, Wu Qian got off work on time. His assistant, Xia Kuan, saw that there was nothing for him to worry about. He hummed a tune as he walked out of the monitoring building and went straight to a nearby brothel. There was a very good-looking girl who had just arrived. Xia Kuan had spent a lot of money to bribe her. He might be able to be the groom tonight. With a face full of pride, Xia Kuan saw that the brothel was just around the corner. With a smile on his face, Xia Kuan felt his vision turn black, followed by a pain in his neck, and he lost consciousness. When Xia Kuan woke up, he was already in a tightly sealed room. The walls were hung with various torture tools. The raging fire was right beside him, and the feeling of being roasted made his body tense up involuntarily. "You're Xia Kuan, right?" A shout suddenly sounded in his ear, and a big man with a scar on his face appeared in front of him. He held a whip in his hand and looked at Xia Kuan with an inquisitive look, as if to see how much punishment he could endure. "Ah. Who are you? Who are you? Do you know who I am?" Seeing this situation, Xia Kuan knew that he might have been kidnapped. If it was really the mercenaries who wanted to arrest him, according to the procedure, they would first show their documents. Even as the assistant of Vice Minister Wu Qian, he needed to greet the Vice Minister's office. However, they did not do so, which was enough to explain the problem. He became extremely nervous. He did not know why these people were looking for him. If they paid for his life, what should he do? Working in the Ministry of Supervision building, Xia Kuan was very clear about the mercenaries' policy towards bandits. They had always killed one as an example to others. In order to destroy evidence and not be discovered, they would often end up killing the hostage. At the thought that he might die, Xia Kuan immediately closed his eyes and shouted loudly, "I don't know you, and I didn't see what you looked like. As long as you don't kill me, everything will be fine." Xia Kuan suddenly closed his eyes, which made the people around him stunned, especially Beta Persei, who was hiding in the dark, who smiled uninterestedly. This Xia Kuan was very perceptive. If that was the case, the next thing would be easy to handle. Things would be a lot easier. After knowing that they weren't here to kill him, and that Xia Kuan was only here to beg for his life, he was very cooperative. He gave him whatever he wanted, and answered whatever he was asked. The final result shocked Beta Persei. When he saw the confession and where the silver was stored, he waved his hand at Ba Daojiang, who had a scar on his face. "Second brother, what should we do next?" Ba Daojiang walked towards Beta Persei, who was hiding in the shadows, and chuckled. It was quite fun to be able to take on such a task. The only thing that made him unhappy was that Xia Kuan was too cooperative. He hadn't even shown any of his skills yet, and Xia Kuan had already flirted with him. "I'll go get the money and report to the young master." Beta Persei patted Ba Daojiang on the shoulder, then took out an ingot of silver from his bosom and went out for supper with his brothers. "How should we deal with this person? Should we?" Ba Daojiang took the ingot and made a throat-slitting gesture. "We can't kill him. The young master has instructed that this person should be left for Wu Qian to deal with. We'll just watch the show." Beta Persei chuckled. Wouldn't it be too easy to kill Xia Kuan now? It would be better to leave him behind to verify his sincerity. Understood. Ba Daojiang chuckled and watched Beta Persei leave. According to Xia Kuan's instructions, Beta Persei and his men quickly retrieved the silver. There were a total of 3 big chests containing 15,000 taels of silver. They were carried into the palace and sent to Yang Chendong. Why is it silver? Yang Chendong didn't seem surprised by this result, but he was curious that the silver wasn't exchanged for banknotes. After all, these 3 big chests weren't very good for hiding. This is all Xia Kuan's idea. He was worried that one day something would happen. Even if he had banknotes in his hands, he wouldn't dare to exchange them for silver. He said it was more convenient this way. Moreover, when he wanted to, he could go take a look and touch it. It would give him a great sense of satisfaction. Young master, what do you think this is? Beta Persei chuckled. Psychopath. Yang Chendong shook his head and said after giving an attribution, how is it? Did he confess? Yes, he confessed everything. He used Vice Minister Wu's name to ask for bribes from many military and political cadres. With the previous company commander and Long Yuntian as examples, many people chose to swallow their anger. In just over half a year, he got so much silver. He also said that he and Vice Minister Wu's concubine would split the silver 50-50. Political Commissar Su Hao took the opportunity to take the high position of regiment commander. It could be said that they each took what they needed. By the way, Wu Qian was just like his name. He really didn't have any money. He also didn't participate in this matter. Xia Kuan also confirmed this matter. Beta Persei had just handed the information he received and the confession to Yang Chendong, but he saw that the 6th young master had already stood up angrily and slammed the table. What a clear division of the loot. Tell me, what other high-ranking officials were involved? Disregarding everything else, just the fact that Su Hao was able to become a regimental officer and was in the most elite unit of the Cold Front, it was impossible that no one else had participated in this. As for Wu Qian, he could only prove that he had good integrity and that Wan Xiaoyu didn't misjudge him. However, whether he could be put in an important position or not depended on how he dealt with this matter next. Young master, please calm down. There were other people involved, but they were all the assistants of those high-ranking officials. Many things were done by them. They are the most trusted people of those high-ranking officials. Some things were done by them. Beta Persei said in a low voice while carefully observing Yang Chendong's expression. In a sense, he was also one of Yang Chendong's people. This was equivalent to implicating him. If you don't clean the house, how can you clean the world? They can't even manage the people around them well. They are also responsible. It seems that this self-examination is not thorough enough. Yang Chendong said with emotion. 1,000-mile dike would collapse because of an ant's nest. Whenever something big happened, it would be because of a small matter that wasn't done well. In the end, it would add up to become a big matter. Yang Chendong thought to himself. It seemed that the self-examination wasn't enough. The departments that were supervised were also not complete. This time, he could take advantage of the fact that he was in Crimson City to do a good job. At the same time, he could also set up a plan for it. Yang Chendong slept late that day. On the morning of the second day, when the various departments had just started work, 3 large boxes suddenly appeared at the entrance of the Ministry of Supervision, as well as a large envelope addressed to Vice Minister Wu Qian. No one could explain how this thing came to be, but it appeared in front of everyone in such a grand manner. This matter naturally caused a commotion. When Vice Minister Wu Qian saw this at the entrance of his unit, he immediately ordered his men to open the 3 boxes. Then, a dazzling amount of silver appeared in front of everyone. Wow! There's so much silver. Yeah, I'm afraid there's more than 10,000 silver. What's the meaning of this? Why did they leave so much silver in front of our Ministry of Supervision in the morning? That's right. Could it be that some official is here to surrender? But this is already more than 10,000 silver. I'm afraid that even if he surrenders, the punishment won't be too light. The sounds of discussion came one after another. Although Yang Chendong had set a rule that embezzling 10,000 silver would result in the death penalty, there were exceptions. For example, if there were meritorious deeds or surrenders, it would depend on the person. Everyone was wondering if this was the act of a corrupt official to save his life. Wu Qian was also dazzled by the white silvers. Although the amount of silver was recorded in the investigation of corrupt officials, it was only a number after all. It was not as direct as the silver in front of him. However, Wu Qian was merely shocked. When he saw that there was another letter on the box that was addressed to him, Wu Qian reached out to take it and then opened it. In an instant, everyone's attention was attracted. Just when everyone's eyes fell on Wu Qian, waiting to see how he would react and guess who wrote this, Vice Minister Wu suddenly lost his balance and fell straight to the ground. Fortunately, someone with sharp eyes and agile hands quickly reached out to support him, so he did not fall. However, at this moment, Wu Qian's face was pale and his breathing was a little rapid. Everyone was even more surprised to see such a loss of composure. What exactly was written in the letter that made Vice Minister Wu, who was known for being impartial, lose his composure like this? Let's go, let's go. At some point, Minister Xinyu appeared and his assistant began to chase people away. Soon, the place became quiet again. Xinyu also took 2 steps forward and came to Wu Qian, asking with concern, "Old Wu, are you okay?" "I'm fine, I have something to report to the minister." Wu Qian's expression slowly returned to normal. Although he was still very shocked and angry, since it had already happened, he had to find a way to solve it. "Okay, then let's go to my office to talk. Come, seal these 3 boxes first." Xinyu nodded and then ordered the people around him. In the minister's office, Wu Qian showed the letter to Xinyu. It was not accurate to say that it was a letter. It was a confession, and Xia Kuan's name and handprint were written in the confession column. Of course, he was very familiar with the handwriting. He could tell at a glance that it was handwritten. He didn't expect such a big thing to happen to the people around him. At the same time, even his newly married wife and brother-in-law were sinners. This blow came too fast, so fast that Wu Qian wasn't prepared at all and couldn't react in time. Chapter 904. In comparison, Minister Xinyu was much calmer. After he read the letter, he sighed. He did not expect that his impartial and hard-working deputy would be involved in such a situation. If it were anyone else, they would be in pain and in a dilemma. "Minister, I would like to withdraw." Wu Qian announced his decision. This matter involved his assistant and family. He no longer had the authority to deal with this matter. "Withdraw?" Xinyu pondered for a moment and shook his head. "Normally, this matter involves your family and the people around you. You should withdraw. But now, this matter has been made known to everyone in the Ministry of Supervision. Perhaps the truth will spread soon. If you withdraw now, people will inevitably say that you are trying to escape. Although it is only a difference of 1 word, sometimes rumors can be fatal. This. Minister, what should I do?" After Wu Qian heard this, he realized that he had underestimated the matter. If it was before, he could withdraw. But if he withdrew now, he was afraid that someone would really use this matter to make an issue out of it. One must know that the Ministry of Supervision looked impressive, but in reality, they had offended many people. Once something happened to them, there would be many people who would kick them when they were down. Investigate it. Investigate it yourself. Then use the results to slap the faces of those who are watching the show. Let them see what kind of person you are, old Wu. Take this opportunity to show your impartial side. Xinyu said with an encouraging attitude, but then he changed the topic and said, "But if you want to do this, then you must be prepared to sacrifice some people. And if you can't do this, then I agree to withdraw." Wu Qian understood what Xinyu meant. He was asking him to make a decision. Should he choose the law or should he choose his family? The problem was there. Presumably, it was a very difficult choice for anyone. It was even a difficult decision to make. Wu Qian didn't say anything. Xinyu took out a box of Heavenly Con cigarettes from his pocket. He took out a stick and put it in his mouth. Then, he took out another stick and handed it to Wu Qian. After lighting it up, he took a puff and said, I know that anyone in your position would be very difficult. But since we're in this position, we have to make our own personal contributions. Our bodies aren't good enough, so we can't go into battle and kill enemies like Ling Feng. But the sixth young master once said that there's no distinction between a position and a job. It's all about making contributions. Think about it. Because of our hard work, many people are now living a life that was unimaginable in the past. Didn't you choose to work here and contribute because you couldn't stand the corruption of the great Ming dynasty? So every time I encounter something that I can't decide, I will think about what my original intention was. Sometimes, I even feel very grateful to the sixth young master. If he didn't send people to bring me here, I wouldn't have known that there was such a world outside the great Ming dynasty. The Han people can live so well, have such self-respect, and be respected by others. To be honest, I like this place. Even when I'm old, I won't regret what I've done because this is the life I want and the life I want to see. Director, don't say any more. When has my original intention ever changed? Don't worry, I'll personally deal with this matter. I'll also let others see what kind of person I, Wu Qian, am. Wu Qian suddenly stood up. His eyes flashed with determination. Yes, he was once an official of the great Ming dynasty. He belonged to the type that wasn't favored. Later on, when the great Ming dynasty split into the north and south, he became an official of the southern Ming dynasty. He was a county magistrate in Yunnan, a place that people called the Savage Land. King Minzhuang and the others suddenly rebelled and the county couldn't be defended. He followed the people out of the city and went straight to Guangdong. Along the way, he had clearly seen the corrupt officials of the southern Ming Empire. Those officials ate and drank well every day. Then, they turned around and watched the people starve to death because they didn't have anything to eat. From that time on, Wu Qian completely lost confidence in Beiming's officials. Until the start of the money-buying activities, he hid his identity and came to Qixian City. It was also at that time that his wife died of starvation. His current wife was remarried not long ago. She couldn't be considered a main wife, but a concubine. Speaking of which, when Wu Qian first came to Qixian City, he was shocked by everything here. At that time, he didn't have the authority or qualifications to come to Qixian City. He could only live in a small place in the countryside. But even so, he was given enough land to support him. Moreover, the tax was meager. It followed the grain production and there was no pressure at all. It could be said that as long as people weren't lazy, they could live a rich life. However, as a former county magistrate, he was more curious. If the countryside was like this, then what would the city be like? It was also at that time that Wu Qian worked hard and performed well. In the end, he relied on his own strength to complete the process of coming from the countryside to Qixian City. Then, he saw a different world. It was a place that he didn't even dare to think about in reality, but it was his dream. Then, with his hard work, he climbed up step by step until he received the attention of the future 6th Madame Wan Xiaoyu. Finally, he became the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Supervision. Thinking back to the past, if this matter was in the past, perhaps he wouldn't have hesitated too much. But now, he was actually requesting to withdraw. Since he felt troubled, did this mean that his original intentions had changed? After a conversation with Xinyu, Wu Qian pulled himself together and then walked out of the minister's office. A series of orders were sent out from his mouth. First, Xia Kuan, who was sick at home and didn't go to work, was arrested at home. He thought that this time, he could spend money to avoid the disaster. However, when the door was broken open and a squad of law enforcement officers from the Ministry of Supervision appeared in front of him, he felt his vision go dark. He knew that this time, it was over. Then, Political Commissar Su Hao was arrested in the military camp. Originally, he wanted to use his identity as a political commissar to resist. However, when he saw that the person accompanying him was actually Commander Gao Xiong, he knew that resisting was courting death. Finally, Wu Chenshi was arrested. Compared to the two men, she wasn't that panicked. Perhaps she knew that this day would come, or perhaps she thought that she would be fine because she was Wu Qian's concubine. The three main personnel were arrested swiftly and decisively. Then, some staff members from the Ministry of Supervision and other departments were arrested. They were usually the people around the top leaders. Usually, anyone who saw them would laugh at them. However, this time, they were all blocked in the office by the law enforcement officers of the Ministry of Supervision. Every time a leader wanted to stand up and speak, the law enforcement officers would say that they had something to discuss with Wuxian. With just this one sentence, all the leaders shut their mouths and did not say anything. The Ministry of Supervision was an existence that everyone wanted to avoid. Who would take the initiative to approach them? Beta Persei arranged for people to keep an eye on Xia Kuan and the other wanted criminals in the morning. He was afraid that these people would escape. When he saw the law enforcement officers of the Ministry of Supervision appear, and they were ordered to come by Vice Minister Wu Qian, he knew that his task was completed. The next step was to see how the verdict would be. In the palace, Yang Chendong was accompanying the first Madame Hu Yan and the pregnant second Madame to chat and bask in the sun. Yang Wu suddenly appeared with a document in his hand and an anxious look on his face. "Old Wu, what happened?" Yang Heir saw Yang Wu's anxious expression and walked over curiously. "Old Wu, what happened?" "The verdict is out. A total of 8 people are sentenced to death and 32 people are going to different degrees of reform through labor," Yang Wu said in an excited voice. So fast. Beta Persei was also surprised after hearing it. It had only been 2 days since yesterday. Although he thought that Wu Qian might continue to be impartial, he did not expect it to be so fast, and the sentence was quite heavy. He reached out and grabbed the document. When he saw the names of Xia Kuan, Su Hao, and Madame Wu Su among the 8 people who were sentenced to death, he had to say with admiration, "Beta Persei, am rarely impressed by anyone other than the young master. Now I'm impressed by Wu Qian." After a sigh, Beta Persei sent the document to Yang Chendong. He just glanced at it briefly and nodded, "I already know about the matter and I agree with this decision." In addition, all the leaders who were implicated will have to write a letter of self-criticism. They will also have to publicly review it in their respective units. If anyone disagrees or is in conflict, then report their name. I will personally send them to the countryside and personally choose a piece of land for them to live on for the rest of their lives. As for Wu Qian, the people around him are rotten. He should also reflect on it and let him stay at home to reflect on his mistakes. Yang Chendong's order was quickly issued in the form of a document. Although Yang Chendong had returned to Qiqian City, he rarely expressed his opinions on some of the work below. Even if a department was not doing well, he would usually talk to its main leader in private. The number of times he gave orders in the form of a document like this was really rare. It was precisely because it was rare that it attracted attention and attention. Originally, when some of the people around the leaders were in trouble, they did not care and thought that they could just find another one. They did not even think about what they had done wrong. Not to mention to do any inspection. But as soon as the document was issued, they knew that they had angered the 6th young master this time. At the moment, none of them dared to take a deep breath and immediately wrote a reflection in person with a proper attitude. Chapter 905. 8 people were killed and executed on the spot. The execution was carried out on the same night. From being caught to being sentenced, it did not even take 48 hours for them to lose their lives. As for the 32 people who were put through labor, they were also sent out of the city the next afternoon. It could be seen that if they did not work hard and get rid of their problems, they would have to work for the rest of their lives. The matter was resolved so quickly, which was out of many people's expectations. In Crimson Nest City, in a courtyard that was only the size of a courtyard, a valiant and handsome man was looking up at the sky. Looking at the bright moon in the sky, he could not help but say, "What a good method, how admirable." "What are you saying now?" Just as the man was looking at the moon, a woman's voice sounded beside him. It was gentle and pleasing to the ear. It's nothing, I'm just admiring the 6th young master's boldness and methods. It should have been like this long ago. Some of the workers around the leaders are even more arrogant than the leaders. If we don't get rid of this trend, something will happen sooner or later. The man turned and smiled. When he looked at the woman in the courtyard, his face was as warm as spring. That's right, my sixth brother is amazing. To be honest, when I was young, I did not know that he had such ability. Everything that has happened now makes me feel like I'm in a dream, the woman said with a smile as she got up and poured some warm tea for the man. There was only one person in the entire Crimson City who had the right to call Yang Qindong's sixth brother, and that was the Yang family's seventh sister, Yang Duo. In actuality, she was the one who had said those words. She had first left the capital of Baiming with Yang Qindong and had just gotten used to the climate and environment of the origin city. Then, because Qiao Yin was pregnant, she had taken a boat to Crimson City. Only after coming here did Yang Duo know what a great undertaking was. After coming here, Yang Duo often walked around with the madams and quickly understood the situation in Crimson City. In particular, she knew that in this city, although marriage required the blessings of the parents, it also depended on one's own will. This was what people called free love. Furthermore, the madams had all said that half of the women who came to Qian City had taken the initiative to divorce and pursue their own happiness. Although it was only 5%, in a place like Crimson City that was already filled with people, this was not a small proportion. This also made her think. She never thought that she would really meet such a man on the street. Speaking of which, it was quite a coincidence. She originally thought that the security of Crimson City would be very good, so when she came out, she refused to bring any guards and only brought a maid to accompany her. However, because she accidentally exposed her wealth, she was still targeted. Just as the thief was about to steal, he was discovered by a man who suddenly appeared and caught red-handed. Yang Duo was also sent to the nearby public security office as a witness. Only then did she know that the man's name was Long Tainan. What Yang Duo didn't expect was that this man who didn't even look 30 years old was already the second in command of Crimson City's public security department. Although he was ranked last, he was still considered a high-ranking official. This kind of age and this kind of official position, in the Great Ming Dynasty, was absolutely impossible to appear. Which important minister did not go through more than 10 or even decades of ups and downs in the officialdom? While Yang Duo was shocked, Long Tainan was even more shocked. He originally thought that this beautiful and intellectual woman would be a little panicked after knowing his identity. But who would have thought that she was so calm as if she didn't hear anything? It had to be said that Long Tainan could be considered to have seen countless people. Just when he was in the public security department, he didn't know how many people he had interacted with. Often, he could see a lot of things from the changes in other people's expressions. But when facing Yang Duo, he found that his tricks seemed to be useless. The two of them were curious about each other at the same time. This was not a good thing for men and women. Just like this, the more they wanted to understand each other, the more they knew. Slowly, they finally understood each other's situation, but at the same time, they found that they had already fallen in love with each other. In this matter, Yang Duo more or less felt inferior. After all, she was a divorced woman. Although it was a peaceful divorce, it definitely wouldn't be good if it was spread out. If Long Tainan was also divorced, it would be better, but this man was too perfect. He was almost 30 years old, but he had never been married. In his own words, he was poor in the past and couldn't get a wife. Later, Qiqian was owned by Yang Xie. As a native, he finally had a place to show his ability. He worked hard step by step to get to where he was today. After a lot of effort, he naturally didn't have time to pay too much attention to emotional issues, so he never got married. Yang Duo was not a little girl who would easily believe the words of others. For this matter, she also found the fifth madam and conducted a deep investigation on Long Tainan through the CIA. But the final result was that this person was very innocent. He had never left Ryukyu Island since he was a child. Such a person would definitely not have any problems. After knowing that Long Tainan really didn't intend to get close to her, Yang Duo was relieved. This was mainly because she had been hurt in emotional issues and was really scared. But after a few years, after giving her feelings wholeheartedly again, it was out of control and she couldn't extricate herself. Now the two had reached the point where they were separated by a layer of gauze. If it weren't for Yang Duo's noble status, Long Tainan was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself. He didn't reject the fact that Yang Duo had been married once, and it had nothing to do with her being the seventh sister of the sixth young master. In his own words, some feelings were there. He really liked Yang Duo. But even if the two sides already liked each other, they still didn't intend to make this relationship public. In Yang Duo's words, she didn't know what her sixth brother would think of this matter, especially now that there were rumors that the Ministry of Public Security was going to be restructured. The former part-time minister, Yang Wu, would also have to step down and give up this position. When the time came, the competitors would be selected from the 5 vice ministers. Even Long Tainan didn't dare to make his feelings public at this time. Those who didn't know would think that he wanted to use marriage as a way to make his career smoother. If that was the case, Long Tainan wasn't willing to bear the reputation of relying on a woman to get to the top. The two's thoughts were very simple. Once the new minister's matter was settled, they would make this matter public. At that time, no one would say that he was relying on a woman's power. As the last of the 5 vice ministers, Long Tianan's qualifications were the lowest. He had also been the vice minister for the shortest time, so he had never thought much about this position. The so-called no desire was probably referring to people like him. Although he didn't have any further thoughts, it didn't mean that Long Tainan wouldn't comment on what happened in the Ministry of Supervision. One of the 32 people who were put through labor was the assistant of the vice minister of the Ministry of Public Security. Because of this matter, everyone knew that the vice minister wouldn't have the chance to be promoted this time, just like Long Tainan. After all, if you can't even manage the people around you, how can you manage a large department? A man and a woman talked about the past and the present under the moon. It was late into the night when Yang Duo had to get up and return to the palace. After all, they weren't married yet. It wasn't good for a woman's reputation to spend the night outside. Although no one dared to control Yang Chendong's sister, she still had to be self-disciplined. Let me send you off. It's not safe on the road. Seeing that Yang Duo was about to leave, Long Tainan said reluctantly. It's fine. After what happened last time, I brought guards with me when I went out. They're all armed with guns. No one dares to provoke me. Yang Duo smiled and left reluctantly. She was looking forward to their next meeting. In the palace, Yang Chendong was accompanying the 5th madam, Su Man. Ever since the 2nd madam, Qiao Yin, got pregnant, the other madams seemed to feel a sense of crisis. Since then, everyone counted their days. Once the time was right, they would invite Yang Chendong over. Regarding this, Yang Chendong could only feel that he was about to become a cedar. He couldn't complain about anything else. After all, each of his wives were outstanding beauties. As a man, what else could he complain about? Wouldn't that be a little inconsiderate? Tonight was the best time for Su Man, to get pregnant and give birth. Yang Chendong rushed over after having dinner with Qiao Yin. After a round of lovemaking, the two of them lay on the bed and hugged each other. Not knowing when, light footsteps came from outside. Then, without seeing anyone, a voice came in. Madam, 7th sister has returned to the palace. Okay, I understand. Su Man, who was lying on the bed, replied. Then, she buried her head in Yang Chendong's arms. You've worked hard. Yang Chendong kissed Su Man's forehead. Then, as if he remembered something, he said, Oh right, you said that you sent someone to investigate Long Tainan. How is it? You're still talking about it? I wanted to talk to you about serious matters first. Who knew that I would forget everything once I saw him? Su Man complained coquettishly. But only the heavens knew that she had taken the initiative just now. With Yang Chendong's identity, they should be people from 2 different worlds. But not only did she become Yang Chendong's wife, she was also in charge of the huge Central Intelligence Agency. Just these were enough for her to be satisfied for the rest of her life. As for children, Su Man wanted one. But it wasn't to inherit the throne. She just wanted to leave behind a crystallization of their love, a witness, and a continuation of their lives. That was all. Yang Chendong felt Su Man-er's thoughts. That was why he treated her so well. He tightened his arms and hugged her even tighter. He asked, "Tell me, what kind of person is this Long Tainan? You also know that my seventh sister was hurt emotionally once. I definitely won't let the same thing happen a second time." Chapter 906. Ever since Yang Duo came to Crimson City, the attention she received in the harem was no less than Yang Chendong's. After all, she was a member of the Yang family and the first person from the sixth Yang master's family to come to Crimson City. One could imagine how much importance she would receive and how many women would curry favor with her. Everyone wanted to gain Yang Duo's friendship so that they could integrate better into the Yang family. It was impossible to hide everything about Yang Duo. Not to mention, other than Tuoya and Su Man-er, the other women knew Yang Duo before and had a good relationship with her. Her husbands were well aware of Yang Duo's failed marriage. They even knew that Yang Chendong had beaten up his seventh brother-in-law the first time he had come to the capital. As the women giggled about their husband's tyrannical behavior, they were even more keenly aware of the close relationship between the sixth young master and his big sister. Otherwise, why would he not do anything else after coming to the capital and instead do this first thing? Yang Chendong's importance was the women's importance. Yang Duo's personal problems also became something that the women had to worry about. They even wanted to build a relationship with her. They knew that the sixth young master wouldn't object to such a thing. They didn't expect that she would have a relationship with a golden bachelor like Long Tainan. This phrase was personally said by Yang Chendong. He used it as an analogy to those young and promising men who were in high positions but had yet to marry. Sometimes, he would even pretend to be disappointed and say that it was a pity that he already had several wives and couldn't be a golden bachelor. Therefore, he attracted a lot of rolling eyes. Yang Duo actually found Long Tainan. Even if she didn't request for an investigation, the other madams wouldn't take it lightly. As such, some things about this person were quickly investigated. In the end, the CIA and the Security Bureau jointly announced that there was no problem with this person. Yang Chendong also knew that for an official to be able to become a vice minister, his background must have been investigated thoroughly. There was definitely no problem with Long Tainan. However, that was not what he was thinking about. He was thinking about what kind of thoughts this man had when he came into contact with his seventh sister. Did he really not know Yang Duo's background, or did he just like her? Furthermore, he clearly knew that she was his seventh elder sister and took the initiative to befriend her. These were two completely different natures, which would ultimately lead to vastly different results. As Yang Chendong's wife, Su Man-er naturally knew what he meant. Seeing that she had asked, he explained, "Our investigation shows that the two of them met purely by chance. It was the beginning of a hero saving a damsel in distress." At first, the two of them did not know each other's identities. Although seventh sister's identity was noble, because she had always been in the palace, not many people knew of her. Also, the thief who coveted seventh sister's money is still being punished and sentenced to 3 years in prison. From this result, we can basically rule out the possibility that it was man-made. According to our investigation, Long Tainan is a very prideful person. Back then, he had taken the earliest Ling Feng exam and even passed. However, considering that he was originally a local of Ryukyu Island, and that the local public security was also a big problem, they fought for his opinion to stay and work in the local area. I heard that in order to make him stay, the local officials even used prodding methods. The general idea was that even if he could be a good soldier, he might not be able to manage the local public security work. Under the provocation, as expected, he did not report to the military. Because of this, the military even fought a lawsuit with the local government for a while. Hearing Su Man-er's introduction, Yang Chendong did not smile at all. Instead, he snorted coldly, "Immature." Su Man-er ignored him. Men were like this. When the woman close to them was about to get married, it was as if they were about to lose something. Under such circumstances, it was very difficult to say that they would find other people pleasing to the eye. This was her husband throwing a tantrum in front of her and also showing that he did not treat her as an outsider. Su Maner was happy in her heart and continued, this person's ability is still quite good. He relied on his own hard work to climb up step by step. According to our investigation, during the work period, he did not have any close contact with any officials. Even Sir Yu Qian, who is in charge of a city, he only went to visit him once with his colleagues during the new year. This is already very rare among the cadres at the secondary level. Yes, he's not someone who wants to climb up to others. That's one point. Yang Qindong expressed his opinion once again. Hearing this, Su Maner, who was at the side, was amused. Husband, then your attitude means that you agree to this matter? It's still too early to say these things. We'll talk about it after I find a chance to meet him. Yang Qindong did not make a decision immediately. Instead, he wanted to observe. He even had a tentative plan in his heart. He wanted to see how this Long Tainan would solve the problem. No one knew what the two of them talked about next. However, on the second day, a piece of news began to spread in the public security department. That was, the next department head had been chosen. Whoever it was would be announced when the time came. Once the news was out, the expressions of the other secondary managers who were still trying to pull strings and possibly taking up the position instantly turned ugly. Since it had already been decided, it was obviously too late for them to do anything else. In his own office, Long Tainan also heard about this matter from his assistant. However, he only smiled and accepted it. Originally, he did not want to be an official. As long as he could work hard, it was the same no matter who became the department head. Originally, he thought that the matter had been settled and everyone could put their minds on work. However, he did not expect that another piece of news would spread. It was said that considering that there were already 5 secondary managers in the public security department, there were already too many of them. One of them had to be eliminated, and this person was very likely to be Long Tainan, who was at the bottom of the list. Once the news came out, the assistant hurriedly reported it and then asked the leader to find someone to inquire about it. Long Tainan was not in a hurry. He thought that such a thing was impossible. It was true that he was at the bottom of the list, but he was also the youngest. He was also very capable. He did not think that this news was true. It was just a rumor. When was there ever a change in personnel that was not like this? However, Long Tainan did not take it seriously. He did not expect that the city lord mansion of Yu Qian would spread the news that afternoon. It said that in this change of work, there would be 2 people who would no longer hold the position of secondary manager. They were the secondary manager of the Ministry of Supervision, Wu Qian, and the secondary manager of the Public Security Department, Long Tainan. The news came from the city lord mansion, so there was no need to doubt its accuracy. At this moment, Long Tainan was indeed a little flustered. He did not understand why this was happening. However, if it was because he was young, then why did they promote him to the position of secondary manager? Originally, he was working well down there. Wasn't this playing with him? Filled with confusion, Long Tainan returned to the mansion unhappily. Tonight, Yang Duo came again. Originally, the two of them did not meet so often. After all, even if they were in a relationship, they had to pay attention to the influence, not to mention that the other party was the sister of the 6th young master. However, it was precisely because she heard about Long Tianan's matter that Yang Duo felt that it was necessary for her to appear. When they met, she even bluntly asked what was going on. If needed, she could go and ask Yang Qindong. If this was said by someone else, it was very likely that they were bragging. However, who was Yang Duo? She would do what she said. If she made up her mind, even if Yang Qindong was already resting, he would still have to dress up neatly and come out to welcome her. Ah, there's no need. On the other hand, the moment Long Tainan saw Yang Duo, the gloominess on his face disappeared. I can't let one person take all the benefits. For me to be able to meet you is already a blessing from the heavens. As for my position as secondary manager, I'll just let it go. I'm still young anyway. As long as I have a job to do, it's fine. Not only did Long Tainan appear to be so open-minded, but he had also thought it through. He even thought that it was probably because the sixth young master knew about his and Yang Duo's matter. Considering the idea of avoiding relatives, he removed the position of secondary manager. However, at the same time, it also meant that he was already seriously considering his marriage with Yang Duo. Yang Duo was a smart person. No matter what, she still had the genes of the Yang family. She quickly understood the meaning of this sentence. Then, her expression changed and she said shyly, "What are you talking about? Could it be that he already knows about our matter?" Hee, that's not strange. The sixth young master can find out about the entire Crimson City and even the entire Ryukyu Island if he wants to. Long Tianan's expression became a lot more serious. From the bottom of his heart, he really respected Yang Chendong, who was younger than him. Originally, Yang Duo came aggressively, thinking that someone was trying to make things difficult for Long Tainan. What, did they think there was no one behind them? If someone really thought that, then she would use facts to tell them that their thinking was very wrong. However, after Long Tianan's persuasion, she knew that it was very likely that the result would be different. She was relieved. After a while, she forgot about the purpose of coming here and changed it to the two of them talking about their hearts under the moonlight. One night passed. The next day, the city lord's mansion issued a decision in the form of a document. The two secondary managers, Wu Qian and Long Tainan, were removed from their positions. As for the new job, there was no mention of it. They were only told to have a good rest first. When the news came out, there was an uproar. Long Tainan was young. Being able to become a secondary manager did attract some envy and even jealousy. However, it was already very difficult for him to become a minister. This time, he was not selected and did not even become a secondary manager. No one was surprised. However, some people said strange things. They said that Long Tainan used connections to attract the anger of the higher-ups and so on. In short, they were all derogatory words. They were just adding insult to injury. However, Wu Qian's matter attracted a lot of controversy. Chapter 907. Previously, Wu Qian's assistant and family members had indeed made mistakes, but Vice Minister Wu himself had not done anything wrong. Not only that, his performance in this matter was not bad. He acted swiftly and decisively, and once again displayed his impartial side. At that time, it really caused many people to praise him. But now, it seemed that a problem was a problem. Even if you made up for it well afterwards, you still could not erase the fact that you had made a mistake. Wu Qian's residence, which had very few friends because he was too principled, became even more deserted at this moment. There was almost no one who came to visit him. This matter also caused many officials with integrity to be disappointed. If even Wu Qian had such an outcome, then would they still dare to follow in his footsteps in the future? Were they not afraid of becoming the second Wu Qian? The entire Crimson City's official system was turbulent because of this, and the atmosphere was even somewhat oppressive. Some righteous people could not help but feel sad. Some people who were seeking personal gain were also intimidated by the 8 death sentences and the sentence of the 32 labor camp members. They became cautious and did not dare to act rashly. It gave people the feeling that they could not do anything even if they had done something. Then what should they do? As one of the people involved in this matter, Wu Qian was leisurely staying at home. This was not just a saying, it was really leisurely. As the saying goes, without an official position, one's body would be light. The days in the Ministry of Supervision were very busy. Now that he had time to rest, he could sleep early and wake up late. He also seemed to be fatter than before. After being removed from his position, the house was not taken back. Wu Qian also peacefully stayed at home. When he had nothing to do, he would practice martial arts in the courtyard to train his body. When he was hungry, he would cook for himself. It was quite carefree. But this carefree life was quickly disrupted. On the 10th day of Wu Qian's idle prose, the gatekeeper suddenly appeared with a panicked expression. Wu Qian's face flashed with dissatisfaction towards this old man who had followed him for a few years and yet was still so unsettled in the face of trouble. A person without determination was destined to not be able to achieve great things. However, Wu Qian did not have the habit of scolding his subordinates. This dissatisfaction quickly disappeared and he asked, "What happened? Did someone come to take back the house?" Since he was removed from his position, in Wu Qian's opinion, it was only a matter of time before the house was taken back. Although he loved his current job, who asked him to be the one who did not know how to judge people? Based on the mistakes made by the people around him, it was reasonable for him to be implicated and even be removed from his position. At worst, he could just go home and farm. Wasn't that what most people did? There was nothing wrong with it. No, no, master. The old gatekeeper shook his head repeatedly. Who is that? Could it be that someone is here to capture me? Sigh. Wu Qian shook his head as he spoke. This was the worst outcome he could think of. Although he didn't think that he had done anything wrong, there were some things that weren't right just because you didn't think they were wrong. He had vaguely heard that the sixth young master attached great importance to the matter of his assistant, Xia Kuan. If that was the case, then it was very likely that he would be caught as an example. Perhaps he was really unlucky. Master, no, it's sixth madam. Seeing that his master had guessed wrongly again and again, the old gatekeeper was so anxious that he blurted out what had caused him to be so flustered. What? At this moment, Wu Qian's expression changed again. He had already forgotten that he had just said that the old gatekeeper wasn't calm. He was able to become the vice minister of the Ministry of Supervision today because of the sixth madam's efforts and words. He was very grateful in his heart. Even when something happened this time, someone had tactfully reminded him that he should complain to the sixth madam, but he didn't listen to the advice. In his opinion, the sixth madam had already spoken for him. He was the one who didn't know the right person. How could he still have the face to look for the sixth madam? Therefore, if Wu Qian were to see who he was most afraid of, the sixth madam would definitely be on the list, and she was ranked at the top. It was just that if you didn't look for others, but others insisted on looking for you, how could you stop and refuse? When he heard that the sixth madam had condescended to come to his residence, Wu Qian instinctively tidied his clothes, then quickly got up and walked out of the courtyard. Without waiting for Wu Qian to go out and welcome her, a group of female soldiers appeared first. They were almost the same height. After wearing the same green military uniform, they looked as if they were carved from the same mold, valiant and formidable. Their eyes were like eagles as they scanned the surroundings. Among them, the sixth madam, Yuan Xiaoyu, was walking in the middle. To be specific, Yuan Xiaoyu hadn't married the sixth young master yet. She was already 17 years old this year, but there was still a year before the legal age of marriage in Crimson Nest City. Since the law was set by the sixth young master himself, he naturally had to abide by it. Although the wedding banquet hadn't been held, everyone had already started to call her the sixth madam. Yuan Xiaoyu didn't reject this, perhaps she really liked this form of address. When Yuan Xiaoyu appeared, Wu Qian immediately knelt on the ground and said, "Sinner Wu Qian greets the sixth madam. Get up." Yuan Xiaoyu looked at Wu Qian and found that he didn't look dispirited because he was idle at home. He seemed to be in good spirits. She smiled and said, "Lord Wu seems to be in good spirits. It seems that you have rested well. Thank you for your concern, sixth madam. Everything is well with Wu Qian." Wu Qian stood up and cupped his hands. "Oh. Is it true? Could it be that you are happy now that you have been removed from your position? Is it because you have never thought of working for Yang Xie? Or are you lying to me?" Although Yuan Xiaoyu was only 17 years old, she had already been training for a few years. The way she spoke and treated people was naturally not something an ordinary girl could compare to. Even when facing Wu Qian, when she said these words, she similarly felt a sudden pressure, giving people a lot of pressure. I don't dare. Wu Qian hurriedly shook his head. Sinner knows that he is guilty. It is only right that I be removed from my position. Everything is Qian's fault, so I will not be dissatisfied. Wu Qian's reaction was very fast. However, after he finished speaking, a voice suddenly sounded. Do you not know how to, or do you not dare? A man's voice suddenly sounded. Wu Qian looked in the direction of the voice and saw a row of male soldiers appear behind the female soldiers. They were all wearing black armor. Even their faces were completely covered by the armor. Only pairs of spirited eyes and nostrils that were used for breathing could be seen. It was unavoidably intimidating. When this formation appeared, Wu Qian's eyes flashed with shock. He immediately knelt down again and said with a panicked expression, "Sinner greets the sixth young master." "Oh. Your reaction is not bad. You guessed that the young master is here so quickly. However, you still haven't answered my question." As the voice sounded for the second time, Yang Chendong appeared in front of Wu Qian. He was still dressed in green, and his face had not changed much compared to a few years ago. The only change was that there was an additional aura of a superior on his body. Yes, Sinner does not know how to, but also does not dare. Wu Qian knew that playing tricks in front of Yang Chendong was a joke, so he spoke the truth. This answer is honest. Alright, you can't expect me and madam to stand in your courtyard. Are you so poor that you don't even have tea? Yang Chendong was quite satisfied with this answer. If Wu Qian had only said that he did not know how to, he would have turned around and walked out. Yes, please enter the main room. Sinner will lead the way. Wu Qian's mind was still blank. He did not understand why the sixth young master and Luan Xiaoyu would come to his residence when he had been removed from his position. What was going on? With a myriad of thoughts in his mind, Wu Qian led the way while pondering the reason. Yang Chendong, who was behind him, also walked at a moderate pace. He looked around from time to time and nodded occasionally. It could be seen that Wu Qian was really poor. Normally, as the vice minister of the Ministry of Supervision, Wu Qian's monthly salary should not be a small amount. At least, it should not be a problem for him to support his family. However, both his concubine and assistant had met with mishap, and they had spent quite a lot of money using their authority. He had used his many years of savings to make up for the deficit. Even so, he was still short of a sum of money. Wu Qian, who had no savings, dismissed most of the servants in his house. Other than a gatekeeper, there was only a cook. One was for his face and the other was for his heart. They were both inseparable. This was also the reason why Yang Chendong only saw a gatekeeper and a servant when he entered the Wu residence. In the main hall, Wu Qian personally brewed tea and served it to Yang Chendong and Luan Xiaoyu. Then, he stood to the side and bowed, as if he was listening to instructions. Alright, since this is your residence, it is not good for us to usurp the role of host. Take a seat. Ever since Yang Chendong appeared, he had completely occupied the dominant position. He did not look like a guest at all. Yes. Wu Qian hurriedly agreed. The sixth young master had asked him to take a seat. If he did not take a seat, it would mean that he was not giving face to the sixth young master. This was also a crime that he could not bear. Wu Qian's but had just touched the chair when Yang Chendong's voice rang out beside him. He had no choice but to stand up again and return respectfully. How are your reflections at home these past few days? Replying to the sixth young master, Wu Qian knows that his sins are grave. No matter how you punish me, I will plead guilty. It can't be considered a grave sin. It is just that you did not know how to judge a person. You can still be saved. However, one must learn from the president's teachings. Mistakes can be made, but the same mistake must not be made again. Do you understand? Yang Chendong was very satisfied with Wu Qian's attitude. If the other party thought that he was not in the wrong and continued to be stubborn, then this person could not be used. Yang Chendong had always believed that honest officials were not equal to capable officials. There were many honest officials who were not as useful as capable corrupt officials. At least corrupt officials knew how to do things and make money by taking advantage of the situation. However, some honest officials did not do anything. They only did things half-heartedly. Sometimes, such people would spoil things. Chapter 908. If one wanted to become one of the higher-ups in Yangxia, one's personal integrity was not enough. That was just a standard to measure how useful a person was. First, one had to have this foundation. Then, one's ability would be measured. As long as one had outstanding ability, knew how to do things, and knew when to yield and when to stand tall, such a cadre was what he urgently needed. Yes, I will remember it. I will not make the same mistake twice. Although Wu Qian did not know what Yang Chendong meant, he still replied instinctively. Good, since that is the case, 6th Madam recommends you to be the head of the anti-corruption department. What do you think? Since he had already admitted his mistake, and the matter was not his fault, Yang Chendong decided to give Wu Qian a chance. I have no objections. I will listen to the 6th young master's arrangements and orders. Wu Qian instinctively replied. But the moment he said that, he was stunned. Anti-corruption department? What department is that? Why have I not heard of it before? Of course you have not heard of it. This time, it was Luan Xiaoyu who answered him. Sir Wu, this is a new department set up by the 6th young master. You should know from the name that it is mainly focused on official corruption. The 6th young master believes that people's hearts are hard to satisfy, not to mention those officials who hold great power. To them, just the supervision of the Department of Supervision is far from enough. With the anti-corruption department, everything would be different. The two departments could take care of things at the same time. In this way, the officials who had done something wrong but still thought they were lucky would know that even if they could deal with the Ministry of Supervision, the anti-corruption department was also a mountain that could not be leaped over. This was the so-called double supervision. Oh right, this anti-corruption department is of the same level as the Department of Supervision. You will be the head, so you can do whatever you want. Wu Qian was originally someone that Wan Xiaoyu had her eyes on. He was also a talent that she promoted when she was the leader of the 5-man team. Now that Wu Qian was in an important position, it was equivalent to acknowledging all of Luan Xiaoyu's actions in Qingdong City. If Luan Xiaoyu personally gave this order, it would highlight her reputation. It would let those who thought that she was going to lose power and those who were watching on the sidelines know that she was the 6th Madam, the unchangeable 6th Madam. His previous self-examination of his movements was also correct. Anyone who questioned his decision would be questioning the 6th young master's decision. That would be unacceptable to the entire Chiken city, the entire Ryukyu Island, and even the entire Yangxia Island. Wu Qian listened to Luan Xiaoyu's words seriously. At this moment, his face was already covered in tears. At this point, he understood everything. Whether it was the previous suspension or dismissal, it was just a test. First, he had to cut off the source of all evil around him before giving him a heavy responsibility. In the end, everything was for his own good. After understanding all of this, Wu Qian bowed to the ground again and kowtowed. Thank you, 6th Madam. Thank you, 6th young master. I will definitely live up to your expectations. I will do my best until the day I die. Wu Qian had clearly submitted. Luan Xiaoyu turned her head and smiled at Yang Chendong. She knew that Big Brother wouldn't wrong any good person. Thinking about how she had pleaded with Big Brother before, how laughable was that? With Yang Chendong's ability and sharp eyes, was there anything that could be easily hidden from him? Yang Chendong also smiled. After the investigation, he found that Wu Qian, who was not an official during this period of time, had performed very well. He did not make a fuss nor was he decadent. Only such a person could be reborn. Only such a person would shine brightly when placed in an important position. Wu Qian accepted his new position. What followed was Yang Chendong's warning. Other than reminding him to be careful when using people in the future, he also told him about the establishment of the anti-corruption department. The location had already been chosen. It was also a 4-story building that occupied a large area. As for the personnel, he could transfer them from all over the place. In short, he would give you whatever you wanted. However, the results of the work had to be shown. Other places didn't matter. Within 3 months, Chiken City wouldn't allow any corrupt officials or officials who used their power for personal gain. Within half a year, the entire Ryukyu Island wouldn't allow any corrupt officials to appear. Otherwise, if he found out, Wu Qian's position as minister would be over. Catch them at the root. In the future, the political department will also seriously review the promoted officials. They will require their assets to be publicly announced, their previous records to be publicly announced, and their personal talents to be publicly announced. In the process of these 3 announcements, if there are any problems, they have to be carefully investigated. In short, don't give corrupt officials a place to live. Yes, 6th young master. I will remember. Wu Qian said very seriously. Since Yang Chendong trusted him so much, he had to act. He wanted to do everything for the sake of the public. He wanted those problematic officials to hear his name in the future to be unconsciously afraid. About an hour later, Yang Chendong and the 6th madam walked out of the Wu estate. There was no one nearby. Luan Xiaoyu said happily, "Big brother, thank you. I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for finding a talent for our Chiken city." Hee hee. Luan Xiaoyu was very happy after being praised. Then she looked left and right and found that this wasn't the road back to the palace. She asked curiously, "Big brother, where are we going now?" "We're going to Vice Minister Long Tianan's house." Yang Chendong replied with a smile. After solving Wu Qian's problem, it was time to solve the other minister candidate. In the Long estate, compared to Wu Qian's place, it was quite lively. At least Long Tainan had Yang Duo by his side. Since Long Tainan was removed from his position, Yang Duo came more frequently. After Long Tainan lost his position, he didn't have to be as scrupulous as before. Instead, he could express his love for Yang Duo more naturally. Previously, there were all sorts of rumors, but once the matter became true, Yang Duo really wanted to ask her younger brother what was going on. Wu Qian had committed the crime of not knowing how to use people. What crime did Long Tainan commit? In this regard, Long Tainan expressed a very clear refusal. In his words, he wasn't originally committed to the position, but because he really wanted to do something. Since there was no such opportunity now, then he would just go home and do farming. At that time, his wife and children would warm the bed. It would also be a wonderful thing. But he was worried that Yang Duo couldn't bear the hardships. Yang Duo listened to Long Tianan's plan for the future and her face was full of joy. She was also a person who liked to fight. Many years of education told her that her man was her sky. Therefore, she yearned to go to the countryside and do farming. As for whether she would dislike it or not, if she was really keen on people with power, then she could just ask Yang Chendong for a job. Why did she have to get it from her husband? It was precisely because of Yang Duo's simplicity and kindness that made Long Tainan very fond of her. In the past 10 days, the relationship between the two had been rapidly warming up. It was even to the point of discussing marriage. They were only waiting for the higher-ups to make arrangements for Long Tainan. Once all his official positions were removed, then they could leave here and find a place on the island where few people knew them to live a good life. All of this was so beautiful, but it was all disrupted by the sudden arrival of Yang Chendong. The gatekeeper nervously reported that a large group of people had arrived outside. When a young man among them claimed to be the 6th young master, his legs were still spinning. Obviously, he couldn't believe this fact. Who was the 6th young master? How could he come to a house where an official was removed? On the other hand, Yang Duo wasn't surprised, but she was still worried. Instinctively, she thought that her 6th brother's appearance was for her. After all, she wasn't anyone to Long Tainan yet. A woman always running around in a man's house. It wouldn't be good if word got out. "Tainan, don't say anything later. I'll deal with everything. If he pushes me too hard, I won't let him interfere with my freedom of marriage even if I threaten him with death." Staying in Chichen City, she didn't learn anything else, but the word freedom was often mentioned. Long Tainan wanted to stand up and say something, but he also knew that in front of someone like the 6th young master, he had no right to speak. If he didn't do it well, it would make things even more embarrassing. So he nodded. "Okay, Duo heir, don't worry. If he really pushes me too hard, I'll fight to the end even if I have to give up my life." "Okay." Yang Duo nodded gratefully, and then walked with Long Tainan to the gate. Outside the gate of Long Mansion, Yang Qindong and Wan Xiaoyu had been waiting here for a while. It had been half an hour since the gatekeeper went to report, but no one had come to greet them. Beta Persei, who was leading the team, was already impatient. What the hell is this Long Tainan doing? Is he angry because he was removed from his position and won't open the door? No, let's wait a little longer. Yang Qindong shook his head lightly. But even though he said this, he was also unhappy. If it wasn't for the fact that the other party was most likely his sixth brother-in-law, he was afraid that at this moment, he would really break the door down. Fortunately, before Yang Qindong's anger reached its boiling point, the door opened from the inside, and Long Tainan and Yang Duo appeared in front of him. Sixth sister. Yang Qindong was naturally surprised to see Yang Guo here. He only heard from the madams that seventh sister would go to Long Mansion when she had nothing to do, but he didn't expect to bump into her. What? Are you surprised? Aren't you here to look for me? Looking at Yang Qindong's widened eyes, Yang Duo first put on an angry expression, but then she thought of something. Maybe her sixth brother really wasn't here to look for her, but she misunderstood. Who was Long Tainan? He was someone who dealt with criminals every day, so he could see everything clearly in an instant. It seemed that Yang Duo misunderstood the sixth young master. She immediately said respectfully, "Sixth young master, please come in for a chat." Chapter 909. Okay. At this moment, Yang Qindong had also recovered his calm. He nodded and strode into the courtyard. Wan Xiaoyu wanted to follow him in, but Yang Duo came up and purposely walked further behind Yang Qindong. She asked in a small voice what was going on. After a few days of training, Wan Xiaoyu was also very smart. She smiled and said that Yang Duo misunderstood and that the sixth young master came to talk business with Long Tainan. After knowing that she guessed wrongly, Yang Duo's face turned red. This time, she had wronged Yang Qindong. But so what? She was the elder sister. She had this privilege. Moreover, this was a good opportunity. It was better to make things clear. Yang Qindong entered the main hall under Long Tianan's guidance. Yang Duo pulled Wan Xiaoyu and followed behind. She was worried that her brother would bully her future husband. Wan Xiaoyu, who was forcefully pulled in, saw all this and smiled. As a woman, she could understand Yang Duo's thoughts. When Yang Qindong saw that seventh sister had caught up with him so quickly, a bitter smile flashed through his heart. He didn't say any words of greeting and bluntly asked Long Tainan what she thought of the security of Crimson City and if there were any measures. As soon as the topic came out, Yang Duo became obedient. There were some things that she couldn't participate in and understand. Although she had a lot of questions in her heart, she couldn't say a word. Long Tainan quickly got into his role and reported the things that he saw, heard, understood, and came into contact with as the Vice Minister of Public Security. Sixth young master, people are divided into different grades and ranks. Even among the aristocratic families, there are capable people, and there are also wastrels. This is even more so for commoners. Some people are lazy by nature. Even if you give them a mountain of gold and silver, they will eat it all. And once they don't have money, they can only think of other ways. This kind of illegal thing has appeared. Moreover, they are emerging endlessly, and they can't be stopped despite repeated prohibitions. You're right, but we have to find a way to solve this problem. At least, we have to let those who want to take risks know what they can't do. Otherwise, they won't be able to make a comeback for the rest of their lives. Yang Qindong nodded in agreement. Throughout the ages, there would always be some bad elements appearing, even in prosperous times. This was the reason and necessity for the existence of the Public Security Department. If you want to reduce this risk, then you have to be heavy-handed. You have to put in a lot of effort in the area of punishment. This is the principle of killing the chicken to warn the monkey. At the same time, they could also think of some solutions from the root. For example, all the villages, townships, counties, cities, and even the street offices in the cities had to participate. While vigorously disseminating the law, they could create more personal files. Some of the troublesome ones would be the focus of their attention. Once they discovered any problems with them, they would immediately talk to them and correct their mistakes. This way, supervision would become a routine. Even if they can't be watched for a while and do something wrong, we can quickly find our target from this information. We can quickly arrest them and bring them to justice. This will restore peace to the people and make a list of the bad guys. For example, we can also set up a reward system. Give rewards to those who report. This way, even if it's for the sake of benefits, people will still pay attention to others. Maybe we can also set up some joint measures. For example, if any of the 3 clans commit a crime, the 3 clans will not be allowed to work in the unit. They will also be disqualified from joining the cold front as auxiliary soldiers. Their family members will also not be allowed to work or go to school in the city. This way, more people will help us supervise their family members. This will be more effective in controlling the crime rate. Of course, if we do this, we will need the cooperation of many departments. We will also need to fork out a lot of money. Not bad. After listening to Long Tianan's report, Yang Chendong knew that this person must have a mature plan in mind. He couldn't help but sigh. Opportunities were indeed prepared for those who were prepared. The problem you raised and the solution are very good. How about this? Go back and write a detailed plan and report it to me. If there are no problems, we will use this as the standard to distribute it. We just need to fork out some money. Compared to the damage their crimes will cause to the city and the people, this is nothing. Thank you, 6th young master. Long Tainan quickly clasped his fist to express his gratitude. You don't have to thank me. Just do your job well in the future. This time, I'm actually here to inform you that the Public Security Department will be transformed into the Ministry of Public Security. The intention is to maintain public order. When the time comes, this department will be responsible for the security of the entire island. It will also be responsible for arresting those who break the law and guiding the security of other provinces. It's a difficult task. What do you think? Is there a problem with you being the department head? After Yang Chendong finished speaking, he looked at Long Tainan with a smile. The biggest reason Yang Chendong admired Wu Qian and Long Tainan was that they knew when to advance and when to retreat. Speaking of which, one of them had a good personal relationship with the 6th madam, and the other was more likely to become his 7th brother-in-law. After they were removed from their positions, they could have asked someone to pass on the message that they were looking for a new position. However, they didn't. This alone made him satisfied. Although if they really did so, for the sake of the 6th madam and 7th sister, he wouldn't be stingy and would arrange a new position for them. However, the position would definitely not be as important as it was now. It was because these 2 people knew when to advance and retreat that Yang Chendong gave them a great opportunity. He also believed that once these 2 people agreed to this appointment, they would definitely be able to do this job well. Now, he was just waiting for Long Tianan's answer. Long Tainan didn't immediately agree. He hesitated for a few breaths of time before he raised his head and asked carefully, 6th young master, I'm still young. My qualifications, you don't have to worry about this. The candidates for the Vice Minister of the newly established Ministry of Public Security will be approved by you. At that time, they will have no choice but to bow their heads. As for qualifications, I'm younger than you. Yang Chendong laughed loudly. Long Tainan could only be the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Public Security if he agreed. With this condition, those Vice Ministers had to show their loyalty. If anyone dared to not cooperate, then they would have no chance to be the Vice Minister. With this condition, he had the biggest trump card. Those Vice Ministers had no choice but to bow their heads. At this moment, Long Tainan finally felt relieved. He also knew that Yang Chendong was entrusting him with an important task. Thinking that through his own efforts, he could change the public security of the entire Yangxia force. At this moment, he had already thrown the matter of farming to the countryside to his ear. He promised, Long Tainan is willing to go through fire and water for the 6th young master. I won't hesitate to die 1,000 times. Good. Yang Chendong was very satisfied when he heard such a promise. However, he didn't forget to mention that the public security situation would change a little in 3 months and a big change in half a year. If the public security situation still didn't improve, then he would punish them. Long Tainan was still very confident about this. As long as everything was as he said in his suggestion, he was confident that the public security crime rate would be reduced to a minimum. Immediately, he nodded and agreed. Yang Duo looked at this scene from the side. She knew that the idea of leaving the city with Long Tainan and farming in the countryside couldn't be realized. She couldn't help but sigh and say, "Men, all of them are obsessed with power." Haha. Hearing this sentence, Wan Xiaoyu just covered her mouth and chuckled. At this time, Yang Chendong also looked over. After his gaze fell on Yang Duo, he coughed lightly. "What's going on between you and my seventh sister?" "Sixth young master, we really love each other." Long Tainan knew that there had to be a conclusion to some things, so he took the initiative to admit it. "Really love each other? Do you know that my seventh sister has been hurt emotionally?" Yang Chendong's face also became cold. This matter related to seventh sister's future happiness, so there was no room for carelessness. "I know. I haven't seen what the previous person was like, but he must be a bastard. He didn't know how to cherish such a good woman." Long Tianan's eyes flashed with hostility. He was obviously a little angry. Seeing that Long Tainan didn't look like he was faking it, Yang Chendong nodded. "I have always been a very reasonable person. But if you bully my seventh sister in the future, or betray her feelings, then I will definitely make you wish you were dead. These words are effective for life. You have to think about it carefully. There are some things that you can regret now." Yang Duo, who was at the side, heard these words. Hearing Yang Chendong threaten Long Tainan like this, she couldn't bear it and wanted to say something. However, Wan Xiaoyu pulled her back in time and shook her head at her. Right now, Yang Chendong was standing up for Yang Duo. If she interjected now, then all those words would have been for nothing. Long Tainan didn't answer the question immediately. He could feel that the sixth young master wasn't just saying that for fun. Instead, the sixth young master was truly moved. If such a day really came, it would be impossible for him to escape unscathed. But he really liked Yang Duo, so he naturally didn't fear this kind of threat. Long Tainan slowly raised his head and looked at Yang Chendong, who was staring at him, and said word by word, "I will treat Duo heir well for the rest of my life. This isn't because she is the sixth young master's sister, but because I truly love her." "Good, very good. I believe you can do it. Since it's like this, if my seventh sister doesn't object, then prepare to get married. Do it before the Ministry of Public Security is established." Yang Chendong could see that all these words came from Long Tianan's heart. Since his seventh sister was willing, of course he wouldn't break them up. Not to mention, he was also very optimistic about Long Tianan's character and ability. Choosing the wedding before the Ministry of Public Security was naturally to tell Long Tainan that for the smooth progress of work, he could take advantage of the situation. Presumably, with his title as the sixth young master's brother-in-law, there wouldn't be many people who dared to play tricks with him. Yang Chendong was about to leave the Long mansion. Yang Duo hugged him and cried. She was grateful to her brother. If it wasn't for Yang Chendong, she would probably still be biming the capital. It was unknown if she could even endure until today. "All right, seventh sister, you're going to be a bride soon. You won't look good if your eyes are swollen from crying. And the palace will still be your home in the future. You can come back whenever you want. If anyone disagrees, tell me and I'll teach them a lesson." Yang Chendong patted Yang Duo's back and said while pretending to be fierce. "Annoying." Yang Duo laughed through her tears. At this moment, her smile was like a spring flower blooming on a branch. Chapter 9-10. A day later, the documents regarding the establishment of the Anti-Corruption Department and the Public Security Department were issued. There was no sign before, so when the documents were issued, many people were stunned. Especially when they saw that the new ministers of the two departments had been decided, and that they were Wu Qian and Long Tainan, who had been dismissed previously. Many people immediately regretted it. If they had known earlier, they would have gone to the cold stove. Perhaps they would have been able to seek suitable positions in the two new departments now. In the palace, after Yang Qindong issued the documents, he didn't care about this matter anymore. Instead, he focused on another matter. This morning, the Security Bureau reported that the Spanish ship stopped at the port of Cologne. At the port of Campo of the House of Phnom Penh, 200 muskets were sold there. As soon as the news came out, the Security Bureau personnel in charge there felt that the situation was serious and quickly reported it on the radio. In the palace hall, Commander Gao Xiong of the 1st Marine Army and Commander Leng Song of the 1st Marine Division stood opposite Yang Qindong, standing tall and straight. Boromov is not honest. After Yang Qindong said this, he looked at the two generals and asked, "Let's talk, what do you think?" Sixth young master, it's our Navy's fault for not being able to stop the foreign ships from appearing in time. I request to join the battle and destroy this caravan as an example. Gao Xiong was the first to express his opinion, and expressed his willingness to fight at all costs. This time, when Yang Qindong returned to Chichen City, he told him about the foreign merchant ships. He asked them to be watched because the current merchant ships were just scouting, and once the situation here was clear, the next one may not be a merchant ship but a warship. Although Gao Xiong's ability was good, and he was also ruthless as a pirate, he didn't think that these foreign merchant ships could pose a threat to them. Whether it was financial resources, military strength, or firearms, he was stronger than the opponent. Since they were willing to pay for protection, it was a good thing for him. Forcing them to leave was really a bit unreasonable. He didn't know the history of later generations, he didn't know the ambitions of the Westerners, and he didn't know that Macau would be colonized by Portugal for many years. Therefore, even though Yang Qindong had mentioned this matter, he had only arranged for people to pay more attention to these foreign merchant ships and had no intention of dealing with them. But now, the Spanish caravan wanted to sell firearms to the Golden Border dynasty, which was tantamount to supporting the enemy. If it was not dealt with, who knew what the two sides would trade next time? Once everyone had firearms, the safety of Vietnam and Laos would be worrying. Yes, we have to fight. It's just that I think that not only should we attack the Spanish caravan, but we also need to warn the Golden Border dynasty to hand over their guns. Otherwise, don't blame us for launching a large-scale attack. Leng Song, the head of the 1st Division, also expressed his intention to fight. The duty of the army was not only to protect the safety of the territory. Sometimes, showing off their fists was a better way to show the necessity of their existence. There was already a 1st Army at sea, but there was no sign of establishing a 1st Army on land. Perhaps this was a good opportunity. Both generals asked for a fight. This time, it was Yang Qindong's turn to ponder. War was not a game. There were too many things involved, including the mobilization of soldiers, logistical support, replenishment of weapons, occupation of cities and regions after victory, post-war reconstruction, and so on. These all required a lot of money. It would not be wise to rashly start a war without considering all of this. Well, I'll think about it. You can go and prepare first. The Navy is responsible for keeping an eye on those merchant ships. Once there is an order, destroy them in the shortest time possible. Yang Qindong did not immediately give an order, but instead, he wanted to think about it, which was somewhat beyond the expectations of the two generals. But this was the meaning of the 6th young master, so they had to obey. They immediately agreed and left the hall. They did not know that this time, Yang Qindong did not immediately order the troops to attack. That was also his reason. Because this time, what he wanted was not only to teach the Golden Border dynasty a lesson, but also to prepare for a war to destroy the country. Since he wanted to destroy the country, if he did not prepare in advance, how could he occupy such a large territory? If he did not handle it well, he would have made a wedding dress for others. So he did not do anything. Once he did, he was bound to get the biggest benefits. As such, just the number of people needed was a huge number. Once the Golden Border dynasty was destroyed, it would become another province of Yangtze, just like Vietnam and Laos. Then, how many people should be placed there to further rule it and form a general trend. Firmly controlling it and preventing civil strife was one of the first things to consider. The grassland was now stable. Not long after he left, he had fought several big battles. For a while, there should not be any enemies there. But there had been no news from the three masters of Lingfeng, Wusheng, and Shenbo. To what extent had their battle with the Golden Horde reached? Was it possible that they had failed and even attracted the army of the Golden Horde? If that was the case, then Baiming and even Walla and Yeshen would take the opportunity to attack. As for North Korea, they had always been a vassal state of Baiming. The Li dynasty there had always followed the Great Ming dynasty. This time, they saw their ships at sea again. They were an existence that could cut off their supply line at any time. If Baiming really attacked Shicheng, how could they stand by and watch? At that time, they would have one more enemy. On the Japanese Empire's side, the Security Bureau had already sent news that the Emperor was preparing to attract more people and forces to fight against the general. Once the two sides fought, no matter who won in the end, Yang Chendong would take the opportunity to intervene. Otherwise, once either side completely controlled the place, it would be a big obstacle for him to send troops to the Japanese Empire in the future. There was also the Siam and Awol dynasty around the Golden Horde dynasty. Would they watch him attack the Golden Horde dynasty? If the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold. They would not do this. How to restrict them and not let them play a role in this war was also a problem that needed to be seriously considered. After summing up all these things, Yang Chendong suddenly found that his strength was still too weak. Once several places fought at the same time, it was conceivable that the military force would be stretched thin. It was even possible to lose land. It seems that I need to make a good plan, Yang Chendong said to himself. He picked up the pen and paper on the table and began to write the preparations that needed to be done. 7 days later, 7th sister Yang Duo's wedding. Yang Chendong, as the only relative in Qiqian City, naturally had to show up. After some excitement, the next day, Yang Chendong issued the first order to prepare for the war. The formation of the First Land Army. The commander was Leng Song. His rank was also promoted from colonel to major general. This order, which was late for nearly a year, made Leng Song's eyes fill with tears. During this period, he was confused, and even decadent, but in the end, he survived. Now that his dream had finally come true, he found that he wasn't that excited. On the contrary, a strong fighting spirit flowed in his heart. He wanted to take advantage of the upcoming battle to prepare for it. This time, he had to show off his might. The soldiers who were ready to enter the First Land Army began to report from all over the country, enriching the team and making it stronger. Soon after, the second order was issued. 200,000 people and 30,000 educated young people were selected to be ready to move at any time. In order to encourage everyone's enthusiasm, once they moved, each person would be given 20 mu of grain field or 100 taels of silver. They could choose one of the suitable jobs. When the army and people were ready, Yang Chendong sent another telegram to the first city, asking the city lord, Yu Mian, to arrange 50,000 Mongolian people to be ready to move at any time. He also informed Tiger's Mane to let the 1st Cavalry Division prepare for battle. If they wanted to become the strongest cavalry in the world, they needed to constantly kill. Since there were no big battles around the first city, they would be arranged to participate in the battle in the Phnom Penh dynasty. Next, there were 2 provinces in Vietnam and Laos. The 2 governors also received the preparation of 30,000 people to come and move at any time. Yang Chendong was preparing for the occupation after defeating the Phnom Penh dynasty. With the participation of 340,000 people, it would play a great role in winning the people's hearts and ruling this place. The orders were issued one by one. After Yang Chendong participated in the opening ceremony of the Anti-Corruption Department and the Ministry of Public Security, he ushered in the Spring Festival of 1454 AD. He accompanied his wives to celebrate the Spring Festival happily. On the 7th day of the Spring Festival, he took the ship of the new army's 4th Division from Chien City straight to Lao Province. At this time, it had been more than 3 months since Yang Chendong came to Chien City. This time, he raised his sword high again and slashed toward the Phnom Penh dynasty. Yang Qindong met Yuan Shaochen again in Mahase, a city in the southeast of Lao province. This time, it had been more than a year since they parted. After more than a year of experience, Yuan Shaochen was more capable and mature. The sense of immaturity on his body had faded a lot and was replaced by a more mature temperament. As soon as he saw Yang Qindong, he gave a standard military salute. "Sixth young master, you've worked hard." "You've worked hard too." Yang Qindong smiled and returned the salute. He patted Yuan Shaochen on the shoulder. "How is it? Are you used to living and working here?" "It's okay. At first, I felt that the burden on my shoulders was a little heavy. I was out of breath for a while, but now I'm used to it." Yuan Shaochen smiled and asked Yang Qindong to sit on the first seat. Then he also chose a seat next to him. Chapter 9:11. People always have to grow. This is a process, and it is also a wealth. If you accumulate it well, you will benefit a lifetime. All the data has shown that the construction and work in Lao province is very good. You, as the governor, should be the first to contribute. After Yang Qindong sat down, he praised Yuan Shaochen for a while. This was not a casual praise from Yang Qindong, nor was it a routine praise. From the data, from the feedback of the Security Bureau and the CIA, the work in Lao province was indeed very smooth. Compared to Vietnam province, which had been conquered 4 months ago, Laos had already surpassed them in many aspects. Judging from this point alone, Yuan Shaochen had indeed done a good job. In fact, he could even be used as the basis for the Analects of Confucius. "Thank you, sixth young master, for the praise. We have done far enough, there are still more things to do." Yuan Shaochen said modestly. Okay, you did a good job, I am very happy, Xiao Yu is also very happy. You don't know, since you left Chichen City, Xiao Yu has sent me countless telegrams. She is very worried about you, and she is very concerned about you. The facts also proved that I was not wrong. You did a good job, her worries were unnecessary. Haha. Seeing that Yang Qindong was in a good mood, Yuan Shaochen just smiled. Although he and Yuan Xiaoyu were brother and sister, and their relationship had always been very good, it would not be long before they became master and servant. This was something that had to be clarified first. Father and son, there was the etiquette between a ruler and a minister, and then there was the relationship between father and son. Knowing that Yuan Shaochen had a sense of propriety and would not say anything on sensitive issues, Yang Qindong changed the topic. "Tell me, how is the situation here now? It has been more than a year since the last battle. Did anyone forget the pain and want to jump up?" "Yes. The sixth young master is really good at predicting things. Some people really don't learn from their mistakes. They are indeed jumping up and down." Yuan Shaochen smiled. Then, he began to report on the situation in Southeast Asia. More than a year ago, the mercenaries found a suitable excuse to start a war with the Solangan family. They fought all the way to Suwon City, the hinterland of the Golden Rim dynasty. Boromir had no choice but to lower his noble head and take the initiative to reconcile. The war had brought peace to Laos, and over the past year, Laos had been developing rapidly. The economy had recovered and was even better than before, and the standard of living of the people was also improving day by day. As Lao province became more powerful, the commoners lived better lives, and it attracted more and more commoners from nearby countries to migrate to Lao province. This was a good thing for Yuan Shaochen, who was in urgent need of manpower, but it was a headache for the surrounding countries. They all sent out envoys to protest. In their words, Laos was using another method to encroach on their interests. Once there were no commoners in the country, what could they do? At that time, the country would no longer be a country. Speaking up to here, Yuan Shaochen smiled. "For this matter, we have suffered a lot from them. However, with the idea that strength is the right to speak, we in Yunnan province did not pay attention to them. Instead, we adopted the method left behind by the sixth young master. We deliberately strengthened the close relationship with the Siam dynasty and the Awad dynasty. We also selectively closed some of the entrances to the two neighboring countries, and gave them more preferential policies in commercial cooperation. On the other hand, we continued to impose the previous high-pressure policy on the Golden Rim dynasty. In this way, under the unfair treatment, the Golden Rim dynasty could not sit still. Wave after wave of envoys were sent over. After their protests were ineffective, they blamed their allies, the Siam dynasty and the Awad dynasty, according to our plan. We learned from various channels that the so-called alliance of the three countries has entered a period of ice. They can no longer be the same as before. Good, this method of domination is beautiful, and the method of disintegration is also very good. Xiaochen, then you estimate that if we start now, will the alliance of the three countries still unite to fight against our army? Yang Qindong laughed with satisfaction. Now it seemed that leaving Yuan Xiaochen to preside over the overall situation in Laos was indeed very correct. Sixth young master, are we going to start? At this time, Yuan Xiaochen was also excited, and his whole body was tense. Well, this time I secretly came here for this matter. But the premise is that once we start against the Golden Rim dynasty, will Siam and Awad send troops, how many troops will they send, and whether their attitude will be firm. We must figure this out in advance. Yang Qindong nodded. Yuan Xiaochen was someone he trusted. Naturally, there was nothing that he could not tell him. What's more, if he wanted to win this war, he must get Yuan Xiaochen's full support. After telling the truth, Yuan Xiaochen became more excited. Good, it's time to fight. Sixth young master, you don't know, since we started to discriminate, the Golden Rim dynasty has also taken a lot of corresponding measures, such as increasing the military control at the border, strictly checking the people who want to migrate, strictly inspecting the caravans sent by us, and even imposing heavy taxes, etc. Sigh. Yuan Xiaochen sighed and said, because of this matter, many businessmen have complained to the provincial government. But considering that we are still focusing on economic development and urban construction, and have no intention of fighting, we can only endure this silently. Now it's good, we can finally teach them a lesson. Looking at Yuan Xiaochen's emotional voice, Yang Qindong just smiled. As the governor of a province, while receiving respect and glory, there were also some pressures that needed to be shouldered. Only by enduring all these would one be considered to have truly matured. Only then could one be considered to have achieved the fruits of one's cultivation and be entrusted with heavy responsibilities in the future. After a simple complaint, Yuan Xiaochen spoke about the various possibilities that he thought would happen once it happened. Although the relationship between the three countries is not as good as before because of our dominance, the relationship between the three countries in the alliance is not as good as before. But after all, if the lips are gone, the teeth will feel cold. Even if they are planning for themselves, they will not watch the Golden Rim dynasty be captured by us. They should still send troops. Yang Qindong understood this point. After all, the existence of the three countries' alliance was to ensure their most basic interests, to ensure that they had a certain power to fight back in the face of more powerful mercenaries. Now that someone had touched one of them, it was tantamount to touching their foundation. What if we can end the battle quickly? Since there was already animosity in his heart, how to make full use of this was a problem that Yang Qindong had to consider. For example, if Sui Xiong suddenly took action and quickly eliminated the Goldbein dynasty, the war would be over by the time Siam and Ava reacted and gathered their forces. He did not believe that the two countries would take the initiative to start a war with the mercenaries. Fast? How fast? Yuan Xiaochen instantly understood the meaning of Yang Qindong's words, and immediately looked curious. Solve it within 1 to 2 months. What do you think? Yang Qindong leaned back in his chair and said unhurriedly. 1 to 2 months? Really? Hearing that the Golden Rim dynasty could be taken down in such a short time, Yuan Xiaochen was also shocked and thought that it was impossible. After all, it was a country with a large territory and enough troops and combat power to protect itself. But this was said by Yang Qindong, and Yuan Xiaochen had to believe it. As soon as the words came out, Yuan Xiaochen regretted it and looked embarrassed. What was he doing just now? Was he questioning the sixth young master? Well, don't have any pressure. It's normal for you to have such thoughts. Presumably, not only you, but everyone will think so. In that case, if we really solve the problem of the Golden Rim dynasty in a short time, they won't think of it. This will create enough favorable conditions for our next work, right? Yang Qindong said with a look of understanding. Yang Qindong knew that if he said that he could solve the problem of the Golden Rim dynasty in 1 to 2 months, everyone would think that he was exaggerating. But such things had happened in history. For example, in the Gulf War of later generations, the powerful Western countries only took 1 month and 11 days to solve the war. At that time, the whole world was shocked. Yes, that Western country had everything that a modern army had. But in contrast, didn't the mercenaries have many advantages today? They had the world's strongest cavalry that had been in war on the Mongolian grassland for a long time. At sea, they had the world's fastest warships and the best artillery. With both sea and land, if they were well prepared, it was possible to solve the entire Golden Rim dynasty in a very short time. As long as the Golden Rim dynasty was annexed, the next Siam dynasty and Awad dynasty would be like a half-wrapped dumpling. They could be controlled however they wanted. In that case, controlling the 5 Southeast Asian countries bordering the Great Ming dynasty would become a reality. Once this place was connected and managed for a period of time, this place would become another Crimson City, a primordial city, and a new base. At that time, whether it was marching to other Southeast Asian countries in the south, attacking the countries on the sea, or to deter Biming, or even to the north, it would be possible. Only in this way could he kill without worrying about the safety of his backyard. The idea was beautiful, but there were also many issues to consider when it came to actual operation. For example, the migration of personnel, controlling the entire Golden Rim dynasty, and building it faster were the top priorities. Chapter 9:12. What Yang Qindong wanted was a Phnom Penh dynasty that could become his logistics base, not a Phnom Penh dynasty that was devastated, scarred, and could even have civil strife at any time. If this was the case, it was better not to occupy it, so as not to spend a lot of energy on it. That would not be worth the loss. Today's mercenaries were like the German army during World War II. They had strong military strength and financial support in the early stages of the war. However, after fighting one battle after another, he was ultimately defeated. One of the most fundamental reasons was that they couldn't see their own strength at all. They thought they were the best in the world, but they didn't know that strong combat power was not equal to strong ruling and management ability. Yang Qindong never thought of becoming a fat man in one bite. What he wanted was how to win wars quickly and steadily without shaking the foundation. For this reason, he set a goal for himself. That was, he would never spend too much time and energy in any war. If he could fight, he would fight. If he couldn't fight, he would withdraw immediately. Otherwise, once he fell into the quagmire of war, he might not be able to extricate himself. Once there was a problem in a certain link, it was not a matter of whether he could win others, but whether he could survive or not. Having a broader vision and a worldview beyond the world was also a major advantage of Yang Qindong. It was something that others could not compare to. Yes, if we can really solve the problem of the Phnom Penh dynasty in 1 or 2 months, then we can really catch them off guard and make them unable to send troops to help. In this way, I will do it. I will try to delay the time for Siam and Awa to send troops. After understanding Yang Qindong's intention, Yuan Shaochen promised. Not only that, Laos and Yunnan province need to provide 30,000 people to the Phnom Penh dynasty. There must be a certain proportion of skilled workers among these people. After the war, it means that there will be reconstruction. This work is also very important. What Yang Qindong wanted was not only the full support of Yuan Shaochen, but also the help of people and talents. Of course, the money for the reconstruction of the Phnom Penh dynasty after the disaster will be provided by Chichen City. Laos doesn't have to worry about this. Oh, that shouldn't be a problem. Although Lao province had only been established for a short period of time, it had the support of Chichen City. There were still many technical talents. When the time came, it should not be a problem to allocate about 5,000 people. Luan Shaochen agreed. Yang Qindong was gratified and said, "Time is tight. I can't reveal that I'm here for the time being. You have to do some work yourself. You also need to inform the governor of Vietnam, Song Zhe. These are all my orders. You just need to convey them." "Okay, sixth young master, I know what to do." Luan Shaochen nodded again. He knew that if war broke out, it would have a huge impact on the economic development of Lao province, but he had to follow the overall situation. Even in the long run, it was worth it to lose something now. One was his own people, and the other could become a bomb at any time. In the following time, Yang Qindong and Luan Shaochen talked for half a day in the small courtyard, exchanging opinions on some things. Yang Qindong also proposed a general direction of the development of things. As for the details, it was up to Luan Xiaoli to grasp. The next day, Luan Shaochen left Mahase City. To the outside world, this was just an ordinary inspection, and it did not attract the attention of any forces. However, when he left, only he himself knew what sort of heavy responsibility he was shouldering. When he thought of the departure, Yang Qindong only gave him half a month to prepare. He felt great pressure, but at the same time, he was excited. Once the Phnom Penh dynasty became one of the mercenary forces, it could be imagined that the development of Lao province would enter the fast lane, and the speed of development would be rapid. Half a month to prepare, this was not only the time limit Yang Qindong gave Luan Shaochen, but also the deadline he gave to the participating forces. As early as 10 days ago, the first city on the grassland received a telegram. 48 hours later, the fully prepared 1st Cavalry Division left the first city area. They traveled at night from the new Air Gondousi area to the sea town, where a large number of transport ships were waiting for them. The 1st Cavalry Division came and went like a shadow. They did not even have a fixed training place. Everything was based on actual combat. Wherever they appeared, there would often be a war. Even if such an army suddenly disappeared on the grassland, no one would know and notice. This increased the stealth of the operation. When the various forces knew that the 1st Cavalry Division appeared in Southeast Asia and showed their powerful side to the Phnom Penh dynasty, it was already a matter of the future. Not only was the 1st Cavalry Division in action, but the 1st Sea Army of the Navy was also in action. Commander Gao Xiong gave the task of dealing with the Phnom Penh dynasty to Long Yintian, the commander of the 3rd Division. Yang Qindong had personally promoted this person from an acting regiment commander to the position of a division commander. This time, it was time for him to perform and repay Yang Qindong. Advancing on both land and sea could greatly damage the Phnom Penh dynasty and shorten the time to occupy this place. In addition, he personally led more than 8,000 soldiers of the 4th Division of the 1st Sea Army, plus 8,000 soldiers of 20 auxiliary battalions. He seemed to have seen the scene of the 5-star flag being placed all over the Phnom Penh dynasty. After Luan Shaochen returned to Wanxiang City, where the provincial government was located, he immediately made a series of arrangements. Some of them were for the province, some were for the province, some were for the province, some were for the economy, some were for the civil affairs, and some were for the military. 2 days later, Luan Shaochen attended a regular meeting at the Lao Commerce Bureau and gave a speech. In view of the recent friendly relations with Siam and Ava, in order to deepen the relationship and cooperation between each other, the export point of goods was increased by 5% and the price was lowered by 5%. The comparison of 5% between the two countries increased the interests of the merchants of the two countries by far more than 10%, it would only be more. When the news came out, the merchants of the two countries were jubilant, and the major forces behind those merchants were also very happy. Since ancient times, officials and merchants were closely related. Luan Shaochen saw through this and made this move. With this agreement, it could be greatly guaranteed that once the Phnom Penh dynasty was attacked, the reinforcements of Siam and Ava would slow down. After all, once they chose to fight with the mercenaries, it would inevitably affect the trade and the income and living standards of those in power. 3 days later, Luan Shaochen represented the Lao government to express great dissatisfaction with the Phnom Penh dynasty's blockade of the border. 2 days later, the Lao army in the province began to move frequently. Under the leadership of General He Guang, they quickly moved to the border area of the province and began to gather a large amount of food. When there was a change in the military, it was often the first to attract attention. The spies of Phnom Penh, Siam, and Ava in Laos also moved. However, what they did not understand was that the mercenaries stationed in Laos and Vietnam, the 2nd Division of the Cold Front, under Luo Pa, did not move at all. They were still training in the barracks. From time to time, they could see the army running and training outside the barracks. The Lao army was just a local army, so it was not scary. The 2nd Division of the mercenaries was the existence that could affect the hearts of the three countries. Therefore, after seeing this result, the three parties almost all had the same opinion. That was, the Lao army's movement was just to deter the Phnom Penh dynasty. They did not intend to really move. Of course, if the Lao army really moved, it was still uncertain whether they could defeat the Phnom Penh dynasty. 3 days after the decision was made, they thought that the Lao army's movement would stop. After all, there was nothing to see if there was only thunder and no rain. However, what they did not expect was that the Lao army did not stop the so-called deterrence movement. On the contrary, they sent troops to Shangbing City. Both sides stationed troops on the border. It was a sign that a storm was brewing. Siam and Ava could no longer stand by and do nothing. They sent out envoys to mediate between the two countries. In their eyes, the best situation was for all sides to get along well with each other. Anyone who wanted to break this situation would be their enemy. The appearance of the messengers of the two countries seemed to ease the situation. At least, they did not see the Lao army sending troops. While everyone was relieved, the messengers of Siam and Ava found the messenger of the Phnom Penh dynasty. They expressed their concern about the current situation. Since the Lao army had restrained themselves from sending troops, should the Phnom Penh dynasty make a friendly gesture and withdraw some troops from the border between the two countries? The messenger of the Phnom Penh dynasty was calm about this matter. He already knew that it was only the Lao army that came. He did not care about this kind of army. Not to mention, according to their statistics, the number of troops that came was not even 10,000. On the contrary, the Phnom Penh dynasty stationed 50,000 troops at the border. Whether it was the comparison of numbers or the comparison of military strength, they seemed to have the advantage. Under such circumstances, how could they retreat easily? It doesn't matter. The Lao army just wants to show that they are the boss. There will be no war. This was the answer of the messenger of the Phnom Penh dynasty. For this answer, the messengers of Siam and Ava agreed. In fact, they were also in a difficult position. As allies, they had to advance and retreat together. However, establishing a good relationship with Laos, especially in terms of business, would allow them to earn more money. None of the losses seemed to be something that they could afford. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.